It's been over a month since the release of Black Ops 7 Zombies. But is it everything we wanted? Or is it just Black Ops 6 2.0? How are the maps and Easter eggs and boss fights? And how is the new Cursed mode? And what should we expect from the DLC season? All of these questions and more here on the 16th episode of the Mystery Box Podcast. Welcome everybody to the 16th episode of the Mystery Box Podcast. This is gonna be a fun one, so sit back, relax, throw this on while you're camo grinding or playing zombies yourself, or if you're driving to school, driving to work, because there is a lot to say about Black Ops 7 Zombies. A couple weeks ago, I sent out a post asking you beautiful people how you felt about Black Ops 7 Zombies, and you guys commented over 700 comments. So today we're going to take a look at a few of them, and we're going to see what you have to say about Black Ops 7. Now, I apologize if I don't say all of these names, but a first comment here says, I'm loving it so far. The maps seem super fun and enjoyable, and it definitely helps there's a ton to unlock that keeps me playing here and there. And I think if you were to give like a one-sentence reaction of how I feel about Black Ops 7 Zombies, this might be it. The maps are fun, really enjoyable, and there's a ton of stuff to do. And it's not just the camo grinding either. The augment unlocks and the master prestige, the prestiging of the weapons, and then you have the cursed mode and the relics and the maps themselves with a bunch of side quests and the main quest to get to the cursed mode in the first place. There's just a ton to interact with, and I think they've handled it very well. In fact, I agree with this comment that says, if done right, this could be a best of all time for me if they handle the post-launch well. And not to get too sidetracked right away. I mean, this is my podcast, so we could do what we want here, but I'm going to be mentioning a lot of the positives that I like about this game because there are quite a few of them. And I'll talk about my criticisms and negatives, of course, because there are quite a few of those too. But despite all of that, I really agree that if they do this right, if they execute this game well, this could be one of the best of all time. And especially with that post-launch content, that's going to play a huge part. Because if you think back to last year with Black Ops 6, we were in a similar situation, and I could have sworn I said basically the exact same thing. But I'll remind you, the maps we had at DLC 1, at Christmas time, at the holiday time, we had Terminus, Liberty Falls, and Citadel de Mor. A pretty darn good trilogy of maps right there. You've got Terminus and Citadel for the more experienced players. Terminus is almost like a Black Ops 1 map with its sci-fi focus, very linear Easter egg. Citadel's a little bit more magical, whimsical, like Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, and it's collect-a-thon style of main quest. And then you've got Liberty Falls, which is kind of more sci-fi grounded, if you could say, but it's more simple. And that's really important to capture for a large group of people. I think that side of the community doesn't often have a loud enough voice in the community without being undermined or kind of dismissed for having the wrong opinion. But having those three maps all in a row, it really felt like Black Ops 6 was going in the right path. And then we could talk about the DLCs. I've talked about the DLCs later, but I think the Tomb, Shattered Veil, pretty weak, but then Reckoning kind of pulled it back. I think Reckoning is going to be one of those underrated maps in a couple years. But fast forward to Black Ops 7, and we're in a very similar position, with Ashes of the Damned being one of the best of all time, in my opinion. Great map, great side quest, great Easter egg, great wonder weapon, great boss zombie. Like, that is just, it's so well designed. And then you've got Astra Malorum, which is a little bit more polarizing, but in terms of like a critical critique, it's a smaller map, shorter Easter egg, still a unique wonder weapon with one of the coolest designs that we've seen. I quite like the wonder weapon, despite the fact that it's really subpar in terms of like killing efficiency. And then you've got one of the most unique bosses on Astra Malorum. I love Oscar so much, even though I do also find Oscar annoying. He's meant to be annoying. He's meant to be a little bit frustrating. Don't worry, we'll talk about him in detail later, but we've got two great maps. We've got the cursed mode, we've got survival maps, which is great, kind of that Liberty Falls type of gameplay, but it's not exactly the same. We'll get to it. But overall, if the DLC season of this year is similar to Black Ops 6, I think that's going to be a really tough sell. If we get reused designs, reused enemies, reused wonder weapons, and reused locations, I think the interest for this game is going to fall short. But if all of the maps are at least of the Astra Malorum quality, I think we're in for a good year. Now, that was exactly the same as what we said last year with Citadel de Mor and Terminus. Hey, if all the maps are just like that, we're in for a good year. And then we got Terminus and Shattered Veil, and yeah, that didn't work out so well. So as strange as it is, I feel as though the trust or the confidence that players have with the game and its life cycle throughout the year is continuously being pushed forward. I remember back in Black Ops 3, DLC 1 came out, Der Eisendrache, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I remember people saying that Der Eisendrache actually saved Black Ops 3 Zombies from being bad. You guys don't remember. You guys don't remember how chastised Shadows of Evil was. Shadows of Evil was not looked upon fondly. It was looked at like a Mob of the Dead clone, but worse. Then you had all the Margwa spawning in. The rituals were worked differently than they do now. It was a tough time. And the reason I bring that up is because thinking about how this DLC season could go, if we did, well, I'm anticipating / slash, I think it would make the most sense that for our next map, we're going to get the Alpha Omega remake that's rumored to be coming out, spoiler alert. But after our first two maps, half of our zombie crew has their souls back. So it only makes sense to me that the next step is kind of like a side quest or a blockade in our journey to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Especially if with every map we're getting 2 of our souls back. So that means if we've already done DLC 1 and supposedly there's 4 more maps coming, we have one map that's kind of like a nothing burger where we just get out of the Warden's trap. We have 2 more where we get the rest of our souls, and then the final one is this Great War final finale. I shouldn't have said that, but as this big finale going up against the Warden where we all have our souls, and then hopefully it connects back to the end of Forsaken and the start of Modern Warfare Zombies with the whole, Forsaken being like, do you want to see how the story ends if you defeat me? And then all of our Requiem crew being dead. I really hope that gets brought back and called back, because to plan that out so far ahead is awesome. But I think that's the most logical way for the maps to go from here on out. But that being said, if the next map is a remake or remaster or reimagining whatever of Alpha Omega, whatever that means, then does that mean we're going to get the Ray Gun Mark IIs again for the 2nd year in a row for the 3rd time? Are we going to get a unique boss? Are we going to get a really in-depth Easter egg? Or is this going to be like the Tomb, where we don't get any unique enemies, we don't get any unique wonder weapons, and the main quest is a little disappointing, and the cutscene is really disappointing? So I don't know, they could lose a lot of steam depending on this DLC too. But with that in mind, I just want to remind everybody that the last DLC, well, one of the DLC 2s, we had Ancient Evil, which was a good DLC 2, Call of the Dead, Mob of the Dead, obviously some good DLC 2s, but in Black Ops 3 Zetsubo no Shima, despite the fact that there are dozens of us who absolutely love the map nowadays, and it's generally considered a fantastic map in a lineup of already fantastic maps, the culture at the time, the atmosphere at the time on YouTube, on Reddit, on whatever, the wait between Zetsubo no Shima and Gorod Krovi was absolutely agonizing. People were negative about it. People were so upset. People hated Zetsubo no Shima. People were outraged by it. And keep in mind, we didn't have like DLC weapons to keep us interested. We didn't have LTMs. We didn't have directed mode to rejuvenate people. It was just, there's the map. It comes with all the quests that it has, and that's it for 3 months or whatever that is, from April to whenever we got, like August or something. So first of all, we have it really good in terms of live service, in my opinion. But then after that, we got Gorod Krovi and people were loving it again. So I wonder if that sort of thing can happen again, because I really felt like Reckoning was a big step up in terms of quality from The Tomb and Shattered Veil. And it's hard to measure community sentiment because a lot of people really enjoyed it, but then a lot of people hated it. But the only reason people hated it was because of the narrative, which I agree it kind of fell flat. And I think we're starting to see why. I think that was just meant, or all of Black Ops 6 was kind of just meant to be a means to get us to where we're at now. But overall, the fate of Black Ops 7 Zombies is not sealed. And I think one of the main things I want to kind of emphasize in this part of the podcast is that I don't think I think it's foolish to make up your mind about Black Ops 7 right now. When you look back at the history of zombie games, the legacy that they all have has changes dramatically throughout the year. You look at Black Ops 2, some people love Black Ops 2. It started with Tranzit and Die Rise. Yes, people love those maps. People adore those maps to some capacity. We could argue whether or not it's nostalgic or not. I mean, I do love Die Rise, but I'll fully admit that's a lot of nostalgia there. You know, in terms of just fun, in terms of just playing a map, Die Rise is not up there for me. I do have nostalgia over it, but I'd like to think I'm level-headed enough to know that it's not quite the best quality map we've got. But then we got Mob of the Dead, Buried, and Origins. Buried was underrated at first, but I think people have grown to appreciate it. But with Mob of the Dead and especially Origins, the history of Black Ops 2, the reputation of Black Ops 2 has completely changed. Same thing with Black Ops 3. Again, believe it or not, at the end of Black Ops 3, it was kind of looked at sort of like Black Ops 1, where it's like, okay, there's not really a bad map. Well, actually, that's not true. People really hated Revelations and Zetsubo no Shima. Those two were some of the quote-unquote worst maps of all time. Of all time, they were looked at one of the worst maps of all time at the time there, which is just insane to me to think about. But most people preferred Black Ops 2 or Black Ops 1 or even World at War at the time. People weren't really into the Apothicons, the aliens. There's no great war at the end. The conflict between the Shadow Man and Primus at the end of Revelations was very disappointing. I don't think you've seen a community as disappointed. I know everyone was disappointed in Reckoning. It was worse in Revelations because the hype was so much more in Revelations. The downfall of it was so much worse. And then that led to Black Ops 4. It was was a rough time. But after Black Ops 3 had been out and then Chronicles was a thing, all of a sudden Black Ops 3 is now elevated because it had a majority of the Black Ops 1 maps and Origins in there. It has now cemented itself as one of the best, possibly the best zombie game of all time to introduce yourself, at least in terms of the classic zombies era. And on a personal note, I think Black Ops 4 started phenomenally. If you look at the first 6 maps of Black Ops 4, Blood of the Dead, Classified, okay, they're remakes, whatever, but I think there's a lot to love about Classified. I wish they had the Pentagon Thief. Lots to love about Blood of the Dead. I know that's really controversial, but I think people are warming up to it now. But then you've got the Chaos storyline. Yes, Voyage of Despair. I think Voyage of Despair is really underrated. I know it can be annoying to play at some points, but I think people are more hard on it than they need to. But then you've got 9, Ancient Evil, and Dead of the Night. And with those 6 maps, that's such a strong zombie experience. And then you go into Alpha Mega and Tog der Toten as the end of everything. It just, yeah. So as fun as it is to talk about Black Ops 7, which this is a Black Ops 7 Zombies podcast, I'm sorry, I just love talking zombies. As cool and interesting and as intelligent as we would all like to think we are about, ooh, I know how Black Ops 7 is gonna go. Here's this, here's that. We don't know until we know. You know, we don't know until we see exactly all the plans they have laid out for us. Who knows? Budget cuts, changing of the guard with Modern Warfare 4 and the pushing of GTA 6, whatever. Who knows what resources they have and the time they have and all this stuff. So just like everything, it is off to a great start. And that's basically all I could say. Black Ops 7 is off to a really fantastic start. Period. What comes after this? I don't know. But now I want to do a little mini deep dive into the maps because as this comment says, Ashes is just perfect. I know that at least for me, I'm still semi in the honeymoon phase. I still feel like there's a ton to experience with Black Ops 7. I'm diving deep into augments and high round strategies and stats and guns and all this stuff. So there's still a lot to do and I'm still having a ton of fun with it. So I'm trying to kind of take a step back and look at things from a bigger perspective. But whenever I do, I still have to give Ashes its flowers. I think they've been working on Black Ops 7 for quite a long time. This map has kind of felt like the Tranzit 2.0 that we've been talking about since like Cold War, leaks and rumors and all that stuff. And, you know, obviously when they come out with this saying that, oh, this is a Tranzit inspired map, and so many people have, you know, clickbait titles, all this, all that. Oh my goodness, Tranzit remake, they're bringing back Tranzit, all this stuff. And that opens a whole can of worms that's really tough to talk about. But it's hard to describe Ashes and relate it to Tranzit because it is related to Tranzit, but not by, you know, layout, not by the atmosphere, not by the storyline even. It's similar in just concept. It's conceptually similar to Tranzit, and that's basically it. You have certain POIs and a way of transiting yourself around those POIs, and you know, there are going to be a lot of Tranzit comparisons, but obviously I think this is the more enjoyable experience. But I just know people are going to go back and be like, you know what? Part of the fun of Tranzit was missing the bus. It was the fact that you had to wait for the bus. It was running through the fog and the denizens, and that was part of the fun. And I cannot think of a bigger, more revisionist history than that. I know the Goomba fallacy and all that, you're not talking to the same people at all the time, but I just think it's a psychological thing. I think humans have an innate like forgiveness of previous frustration. I think that's actually like backed up by science too. I don't know. I'm probably just making that up. But when we look back on things, we don't remember the pain as vividly as we did in the moment of experiencing that. That's what I think is scientifically correct. And I think that's exactly what's happening with Tranzit right now. People are going back there, playing it for a day or a couple hours and be like, you know what, this is kind of charming. It's this cool. I actually kind of like that experience. But like, that does not reflect the experience that people had when that was the only map we had to play in Black Ops 2. And if you were to try to make guides for that map or try to showcase that map or try to play for content that map or even just enjoyment, just, hey, I'm going to hop on, go on some Tranzit, kind of play, not even casually, like the bus leaves you, the pack-a-punch stuff, the buildables, the one at a time, like it's such a negative experience. And everything that I think we had a problem with in Tranzit has been fixed in Ashes of the Damned. The bus turning into Tessie, but also retaining Ted with that personality, I think is the perfect blend, especially with all the quips and the charms and the fact that you can still shoot Ted and he'll kick you out or he'll yell at you or something. I think that's a great little level of detail there. On top of that, on top of having Tessie's also the pack-a-punch, so now you don't necessarily need to maneuver around the map to get to pack-a-punch. You maneuvering around the map is bringing around the pack-a-punch, which I think is just so fun and unique, and it's a different concept that we haven't had in zombies before, at least to my knowledge. And then on top of that, you've got the launch pads, which can get you from end to end of the map incredibly quickly. That specifically was something that I was really worried about in the pre-launch era of Black Ops 7. I was worried that even if they do it right, is this Easter egg going to feel really tedious just driving from one location to the next? And I could definitely see some people maybe having a problem with that, especially with the Easter egg, having to drive around Tessie and move Tessie here if you're not proactive with it. That's definitely kind of a frustration point for some people. But overall, in terms of general gameplay, in terms of if you kind of are focused with the Easter egg, it's a really good map to traverse. It flows really well. If you want to be somewhere, if a TED task appears somewhere, it's not that long of a slog to get there. And what's even better about that is the launch pads don't negate Tessie because, well, first of all, Tessie has the Pack-a-Punch in it, right? So of course Tessie's still important even after you unlock the launch pads, but because of those green barnacles or plants or whatever we're going to call them in the in-between zones, the fog zones, you could use your points to use the launch pads, or you could use old Tessie and you could drive over those green barnacles and get bonus salvage and bonus points. So now there is actually a reward and there's a reason for you to use Tessie in these in-between zones. Yes, you sacrifice a little bit of time, but then the boost from the Pack-a-Punch makes it so much fun, and the jump pads and all, or the jumps inside the fog zones for Tessie make my monkey brain happy. And then you've got the Margwa heads, which has the laser attack, which could get you even more salvage and free ray guns and free Pack-a-Punch crystals. They did such a phenomenal job at creating depth and making sure that the systems, the map specific systems, by the way, of this map actually worked on all different levels throughout the entirety of the game, the early game, mid game, and late game. And even in cursed mode too, because salvage is very important. So it's very much worth using Tessie to go through the fog areas to get extra salvage. Now, all of that being said, I do think Tranzit does maybe one thing better than Ashes of the Damned. And that one thing, it's not a big thing, it's a little thing, but the fact that you can go into the fog and discover hidden areas like the cabin and Nocturne Toten and the power lines area in the cornfield, that feels very atmospheric. That feels very in line with zombies. Like clearly the bus goes from all of these different really well-defined POIs, but if you jump out of the bus in the fog, you have to discover for yourself, especially because there's no tac map, there's no mini map in there. You have to discover those things on your own. That creates such a fun type of rewarding exploration that Ashes of the Damned doesn't have. Ashes absolutely has side quests and Easter eggs in the fog itself, the Dempsey side quest, the Bear Zursa fighting side quest, and then like the free double points and all that stuff outside of the barriers there. Yes, of course, and then some of the Easter egg stops are outside in the fog too. Like I love all of that. That's great. But if you were to find a secret area in the farm and you just jumped out of the back of the farmhouse and way back in the forest in the trees there was just a cabin and it worked kind of like a mini survival map or a mini safe space, just like the cabin from Tranzit, I think that would be such a fun callback and that would be such a fun little secret that's not on the mini map. Maybe as soon as you jump out of that area, your mini map gets scrambled like it does in the boss fight, and you don't need to put anything there for the main quest. You could just have a little bonus something there. Maybe there's a plant that you could use the toxic growth on. Maybe there's some sort of loot crate or something with some salvage. Maybe there's one Easter egg out there. I don't know, but that's something that I think Tranzit does, like the one thing Tranzit does better than Ashes of the Damned, those secret areas. Ashes is very linear, it's very safe, you're not going to wander off. I do think I really enjoy the fog areas of Ashes over Denizens, because Denizens are just annoying no matter what, having to melee, even if you have Galvanuckles and the Turbine, that's what it's called. Even if you have the Turbine and the Galvanuckles and you're meleeing really fast, you still have to deal with the Denizens, so that's not super great. I much prefer the fog zombies in there because they act more like regular stuff and, you know, they put pressure on you and they do the job well without being too overly annoying. Plus being able to use decoys and monkey bombs and ether shroud, all that stuff really helps those fog areas. Now, unfortunately, something else I think Ashes kind of struggles with a little bit are the side quests. I think the side quests in both of these maps, in Astra and Ashes of the Damned, I think they're a little weak. I think Astra Malorum might have the better end here with all of the different free perks, and I really do like the Lantern Easter egg and all that stuff. So like, that's not to say that these maps don't have good side quests. I really love the Dempsey and the Nikolai side stuff. I hope they keep continuing that with all of the different stories, with the backstories of all the people. That's just, oh, it's so good. But I just remembered that there is a free Raygun Mark II Easter egg on this map because it's so difficult to get. Man, not even difficult, it's so complicated to get. You have to open up all the doors, you have to decipher the blinking lights, and then you have to traverse the map in a specific order with all the launch pads just for a free Raygun Mark II. And it's like, okay, that's not terrible, but I kind of have to like stop my whole game just for that Raygun Mark II. Whereas with the TED task, I kind of have a good opportunity to get a free Raygun Mark II just straight from the TED task. quest. So that's a little weird. I do like the Xursa fight, but the Xursa fight, either it's just a cool one that you get. I don't even know what you get for fighting it regularly. Maybe a ray gun or something? I think it is a ray gun. But then if you manage to kill it with the melee only, then your melees are going to be double points. But in order to have like any sort of opportunity or chance at winning that fight, you have to like get geared up first anyway. So you don't necessarily need the double points after that because you're already geared up. We've got the free perks, which I think would be a whole lot better if you could do all 3 of the free perks in every game. And outside of that, I genuinely cannot think of the side quests on this map. You do have Klaus, which I think is good. He's mainly used for Easter eggs, but you can absolutely use him as a civil protector. He's very easy to get unlocked. In fact, that should absolutely be part of your high round strategy the more I'm thinking about it. Especially, I need to see how good he is against the Xursa on high rounds. That's actually good. That's great. You're watching me get video ideas live as I'm thinking about it. And while we're on the topic of these side quests, I think Astra Malorum has the upside because you've got so many free perks. Like I said, I like the Wisp and the side and all that stuff, and the DG2 turret. I think that's fantastic. And it's a smaller map, so it kind of flows a little bit better. But on the topic of side quests, I've seen a lot of people harp on these side quests, and I kind of just did there. But between you and me, I don't think these side quests are bad. There are some bad ones, like the Bongo Companion in Astra Malorum, needing to kill Oscar and then look at your minimap to find the Ravager on 3 separate rounds just to get a glorified brain rot that doesn't actually do all that much, I think is like the worst one that they've done. Doughnuts, the Doughnuts Easter egg in Shattered Veil was much better because at least Doughnuts actually dropped some power-up drops for you. Very, very good. But outside of that, I don't think these Easter eggs are bad. I love the free perks. I love the ether tools. I love the ray guns. I think those are good and they're easy enough. I think they've actually nailed this style of Easter egg. Get this record, put it in the gramophone, get a certain amount of kills, boom, you've got easy salvage, you got easy perks. I think those are fantastic. I love them. You know, on the tomb, you've got this for free Pack-a-Punch and free ether tools. I think those are a core piece of zombies now, just like the power-up drops. I love seeing them in there and I want them to keep them in there. But I think what the community actually means by better side quest is not just, hey, we don't want these side quests. It's not that, because I think they're good. I think what we mean is we want more Hell's Retrievers. We want more Pegasus strikes. Give me a unique piece of the sandbox that is only on this map. We were very close in Black Ops 6. A lot of times we were very close with Veytharion, both on Reckoning as well as Liberty Falls. Veytharion was right there. It was right there, really close to perfect in terms of a map-specific piece of equipment that changes the sandbox. If Veytharion was a map-specific field upgrade, especially now because the field upgrades charge all the time, or increase in charge every time, or if Veytharion was a kill streak that you had to buy for like 5,000 salvage or something like that, I will forever die on this hill that would be the one thing that these maps need in order to be a best of all time. Gorod Krovi is like the best of the best in terms of you've got the Dragon Strike, you've got the upgrade to the Dragon Strike, and in Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 in general, because of the buildable system, every map had a shield, every map had a specialist. I know that was Black Ops 3, not just Black Ops 4, but just having that system alone made it feel like those maps have a lot more quote-unquote side quests than any other map before or since. And with the crafting table, I feel like there's no better time to bring back some way, shape, or form some buildables. I'm not saying 3 different pieces in 3 different locations, let's do this every game, it's really boring. I'm not saying necessarily do that, but why can't we have a little side quest in collecting these 3 different parts and then bringing them together, and boom, we have an Veytharion type of side quest that now we have a map-specific field upgrade or a map-specific piece of equipment. I think if we had those sorts of side quests, then the free perks and the free salvage and the free equipment, I think those are a little bit more palatable and a little bit more appreciated. But I think I've said that enough over the past year. I think you guys understand that. I say that quite frequently. What I do want to talk about is the Wonder Weapon and the main quest of Ashes, because man, I love it. I love the Gauntlet, the Necrofluid Gauntlet. It looks so good. It plays so good. I know some people still don't like it because they might not be familiar with exactly how it works. I do want to do an in-depth video studying it to see all of the damage numbers and exactly how effective it could be, so be sure to subscribe for that eventually. And I know a lot of people probably just miss the old like Thunder Gun, Apothecon Servant type wonder weapons, or the staffs or the bows where you just kind of shoot and everything disappears, and I can absolutely see that, because I mean, we really haven't gotten that. Even in Black Ops 6, you might be able to argue the Ice Staff, but the Ice Staff still had a charge up, so we haven't had like a really big, powerful, like get out of my way wonder weapon in quite some time. Probably since, I don't know, maybe the Chrysalax, but that kind of fell off. Maybe the DIEs from Cold Cold War, even the Scorcher had a little bit of a charge up. So yeah, so it's been a while since we've had a get out of my way wonder weapon. Maybe because with the ammo crates, they're afraid that we might just spam it in a corner, which is absolutely true because that's definitely the high round strategy. But in terms of the quest, I love this quest. It's so simple. You unlock Klaus, you get him to scan, you get the ether canister, you charge up on all the power stations. That ensures that you have the power turned on everywhere. And then of course you use the symbols on the box, you do a nice little tutorial, and then you've got a great animation. This visually looks good. The lore behind it is fantastic. I did do a lore video to Ashes of the Dam, so be sure to check that out because it was really enlightening, really cool to see the history of this gauntlet and why it's on the farm and what the family was trying to do with it, and the personality that it has, that it's a different being and you have to prove yourself worthy, as we found in the directed mode. It sounds really good. It looks really good. I'm a big fan. On top of that, the main quest of this map is, in my opinion, probably one of the best, at least of the modern era, at the very least. And I want to say of all time, but I do also really remember liking Dead of the Night and Nine's main quest and just how long and extensive those were. And this, believe it or not, it feels kind of like Nine's side quest or main quest to me. I don't know. Those of you who had played Black Ops 4, let me know in the comment section if this is like way off or something. But in 9, you have to kind of appease all of the 4 different gods before going on to this boss fight. And here in Ashes, you have to, well, first of all, you have to get the gauntlet to get the vision to kind of see the souls of everything. But then after that, you have to do the 4 different areas and those 4 different trials to free those souls. So you're not doing the same thing, but mechanically in a gameplay level, you're doing one specific challenge at each of these areas. Now, Ashes, you could do them in any order you want, except for the last one. And then in 9, you have to go in a specific order. But I think 9 is a lot more complex and maybe a little bit more difficult. I know the raw step always throws everybody off, but I didn't find the raw step all that difficult. I know the Danu step was pretty difficult there, though. It's hard to do that with like a stock option or something. But that doesn't necessarily mean the 9 Easter egg is better, because sometimes more difficult or more complex doesn't equal better. This one here, Ashes, feels really solid. It feels just difficult enough to where there is definitely some skill expression. You have to learn this Easter egg, but the good thing about that is it's not so difficult that it's going to feel super deflating, I'll say, because even with like the Exit 115, you could get the lightning to strike every single round if you watch my guide. And with every subsequent playthrough, I feel like there are more strategies and you build more confident, but not without getting rid of that difficulty, like tension. Like the farm lockdown is super great, but it's also challenging. Like you have to pay attention and you have to, all right, we got to do this at this part of the round. I've got to put on Frenzied Guard, get me some monkey bombs, give me some of that. Okay, cool. Like let's use all of the tools in the sandbox to get this completed, and how I do it might be different than how you do it. And there's different strategies and different skill levels there. And I just think that's wonderful. You've got your fair share. Like I said, that farm survival lockdown is more of a gameplay related thing, but then you've got your cipher and numbers and puzzle solving way in the Cosmodrome, which I just love. And then you've got a mix of the two kind of gameplay and puzzle solving elements in Exit 115, where you have to mix Klaus and meleeing and using Tessie to revive all of these souls that Reba killed in Exit 115 and then bring them back to life. Well, not bring them back to life, but resurrect their soul. And then at the end, you have this really brilliant narrative tie-in with the director and the movies and all this stuff and the film reels and this epic climactic thing where you're collecting the souls in Old Tessie. And it's so darn good. It's like Reckoning on steroids, where it ties in the narrative so well. A lot of the time in Easter eggs, there are steps where we're like, dude, what are we doing this for? Or why is this so complicated? Because it's a video game and it's just an Easter egg step. But this is so well tied in. We're collecting all of these ingredients so that way we can see the keys and we could see this mysterious cube on there and we can listen to the echo and what she's saying and we can hear all of these souls and interact with these souls. And then you go in the intel system and you can read about the history of all of these different places. And as you're doing the Easter egg again, you appreciate what you're actually doing and how all of this ties together. And then at the very end, when you see all the souls go to the Shadowsmith's pyramid, it feels really, really epic. They absolutely knocked it out of the park with this Easter egg. I'm not saying it's perfect, but dang it, it feels really satisfying from all fronts, from gameplay, narrative, pacing, difficulty, challenge, complexity. It feels like a 10 out of 10 for me. But again, I'm in the honeymoon period, so I'm not going to say it's 10 out of 10. It just kind of feels that way right now. It is more involved than I think anything we got in Black Ops 6. Maybe Shattered Veil might be up there. Maybe Reckoning. Not quite, though. I still think Ashes is more complicated. At least maybe complicated is not the right word. More involved. Maybe it takes longer. There's just more steps to it. I definitely think it's a little little bit more challenging, but if you're nervous about it, I would say this is the difficulty that I would give somebody who really likes Black Ops 6, but wants just one step further. And personally, for me, I think this is the sweet spot. I think if you gave me, well, actually, no, this is a great sweet spot, because then you go to Astra Malorum, and I think that's kind of on the level of Black Ops 6, where it's a little bit shorter. It's got some involved stuff. Killing Oscar that many times is quite a bit, but once you get your code from Oscar, you do the brain, you put the brain in the teleporter room, you look at the books, you get the Neptune, you switch the planets around, you go get the bird, you activate the symbols, and boom, you're on the boss fight. And so that to me is a really nice foil to Ashes of the Damned, where Ashes was this really long, extravagant journey, because, you know, it kind of mirrors the map in that way. There's this big, expansive story going on in Ashes, but here in Astra Malorum, it's a little bit more intimate, it's a little bit more focused. Hey, we just need to tune this teleporter with this telescope, and we need to get to Mars, and we need to go take on Caltheris. Much more straightforward. I appreciate it there, and I think these two main quests are probably right where my sweet spot is. It's, you know, every once in a while, hey, I want something a little bit easier, so hey, let's do Astra Malorum, which I would say Astra Malorum might be on par with something like Terminus, or Citadel might be a little bit more involved. I think Astra Malorum is more involved than Liberty Falls or the Tomb, but I think they've done a great job in terms of complexity and investment for these Easter eggs. I'll suspect that there is a healthy amount of players who want something a little bit more similar to Black Ops 4, where it's even crazier, even more. I don't know if that is the right choice, because if we did get 9 again, or Dead of the Night again, in terms of the main quest with all the steps and all the length of those quests, I feel I can see a lot of people being turned off by that. So I don't know if that's the right call, but on the other end of the spectrum, I could see a lot of people kind of missing the Liberty Falls or the Tomb simplicity. And I say that because if I'm being candid with you, if I'm being honest with you, after running the Ashes of the Damned main quest a ton of times to try to get my guide perfect or as good as I can, I remember sitting there, you know, this quest took a long time, or it takes a long time when you're just trying to figure it all out. And I was like, dang, we're an hour and a half in and I'm just now getting to the boss fight, or I'm an hour and 15 minutes in and I just got done with the Easter egg steps. And I remember having the feeling, I was like, this is why people like Liberty Falls right here, because it's just such a time investment that it's hard to dedicate yourself to that every single time you play zombies. But if you're looking for something with a low investment, not necessarily easier, but just a lower investment in terms of time, in terms of, I don't know, brain power, mental energy, whatever you want to call it, then having a map like the Tomb or Liberty Falls would be pretty good. I would like to think that even back in the day, I did at least mention that having a map like Liberty Falls is a good thing, at least in terms of, hey, if you just want to hop on and do this thing real quick, I think that's a good role for it to fill. And I'm a little worried that there is a niche of people, I don't know how big or small it is, but yes, we have survival maps, but survival maps might be, in my opinion, a little bit too simple. I think survival maps strip away so much of the zombies formula that I think there's a group of people who may prefer it, but may prefer something more akin to Liberty Falls, where Liberty Falls isn't a survival map. It's got its own side quest, it's got its own bosses and wonder weapon and main quests, but it's a little bit easier and simpler than like Terminus or Ashes or Astra or something like that. And I wonder what you guys think of this too, if this whole Goldilocks zone thing is a real thing or if I'm just making it up, but it feels like Ashes and Astra are really good, really involved quests, involved maps, but then you have survival maps, which might be, you know, hey, this porridge is a little too cold. We want a little bit more. Give me some doors to open. Give me some, you know, unique boss zombie, unique wonder weapon on here. So I wonder if we're going to miss, or some group of people is going to miss the simplicity of Liberty Falls mixed with the option to go a little bit further. Plus, Liberty Falls had some pretty darn good side quests on it. You know, you had the bowling Easter egg, you had the Etherella, like I mentioned before, the dancing Easter egg was charming, the zombie falling with the free ether tool. I'm just saying, survival maps don't have any of that. So I wonder if they're going to see that in their statistics of where people are playing, if it's worth it for them. And that's all it is. Is it worth investing all of that time and labor into a simple map like Liberty Falls, or is it better to invest your time into a complex map like Ashes of the Damned or Astra Malorum, and then peel back some of that complexity and really just strip everything away except for a survival map? Like, which one is going to get you a better return on investment? Very curious your guys' thoughts on that. That's an interesting thought. So I love the maps, I love the main quest steps themselves, but now we have to talk about the boss fights, because so many of you commented and have been commenting all this year that these boss fights are hard, and I have to agree with you. And before we really get into this, I know this is like every time we talk about these boss fights and and really difficulty in zombies, it feels like the most passionate and polarizing things that we could talk about, especially when we're bringing up the topics of like skill issues and different people's perspective and play style. I feel like we often go too far into miscategorizing people and not really getting to the nitty gritty of these things. So for this next little bit here, I want to talk about specifics. I want to talk about just kind of black and white game mechanics, and then talk about my personal perspective on these things too, because I think this is one of the most important conversations we're going to have this year, especially with how these first two bosses were handled by Treyarch. I think how we as a community react to these two is going to influence how they go design boss fights or balance boss fights in the future. So let's start a little easy here. Let's start with Ashes of the Damned, because I think for the most part, people kind of agree that this was a little bit too unforgiving. Now, outside of that aspect of it, just talking about the mechanics themselves, personally, I really like the idea of this boss fight. I know that sounds crazy because every time I've done a video on this boss fight, I've been like, oh my goodness, this is unfair, this is that, I don't like this, here we go, it needs a nerf, all this sort of thing. But outside of the balancing of this boss, just looking at the mechanics of it, I know it is going to be polarizing, but I really like the fact that Tessie is essential and necessary for this boss. I know technically it's not necessary, you can actually get out and shoot the boss like normal with how bullet spongy that is, but because Tessie, and probably I should have mentioned this during the map specific rant here on the podcast, I love Tessie. I love the fact that it really is one of the first map specific mechanics we've had. I think it's fantastic. I love it. And fair's fair, Ashes of the Damned plays very differently than any other map because of Tessie. So we've got to give our flowers, we've got to give credit where credit's due. That map specificity is there in Ashes of the Damned. I just wish the map specific stuff was more related to the sandbox rather than related to moving around the map. But that's neither here nor there. Talking about the boss fight, I love that the map specific thing about Ashes of the Damned, the whole entire Easter egg, you're upgrading Tessie, you're moving throughout the map using Tessie, it's a big part of marketing. Clearly they love Tessie too, because Tessie's in the intro cutscene for Astra Malorum. Tessie's a big part of the charm of this map and the charm of Black Ops 7 Zombies so far. I love it too. And so why not use it in the boss fight? You've made this mechanic, you've made this thing zombified. Let's embrace it. Let's go for it. Make something weird. When you look at Black Ops 6, we've got Patient 13, the Guardian, the Z-Rex, and even, both bosses on Reckoning. We all shoot them. We all shoot them with their gun. There's maneuvering. It's very standard stuff. So naturally, having a boss where it's focused and it's built upon the truck itself, I think is refreshing. I think it's so good. I know it's going to be not everyone's cup of tea, because just like you, I felt frustrated with it, with like, hey, there's not a whole lot of augments that you need. Like even now, I played it recently, I think in directed mode or something, and I was like, I don't really need to upgrade my weapon, like double tap, dead shot, even stamina, like that's just not really that important. You could go in with like Jug, Ether Shroud, and maybe like Mule Kick for extra armor and extra whatever, and kind of be okay. And so essentially, I think people dislike it because it's so different, but I like it because it's different. I like the fact that like, no, it's asking you to master a skill set that you might not have mastered before. Obviously, just driving around in the open world of Ashes of the Damned is very different than doing a boss fight, but it's asking you to use that maneuverability. It's asking you to use your boost effectively, use that Margwa attack effectively, use your DG2s, especially if you're playing co-op, use that DG2 turret really intentionally. And I really like that. Plus the complexity, at least I think it's balanced in terms of concepts. What can you do in Tessie? You are very limited. You don't have a whole lot of things, at least mid back and forth. So like your equipment doesn't really matter except for repairing Tessie. Like I said, your gun, your ammo mod, not really important. So you have your driving capability, which includes your ability to dodge and kind of get around objects. You've got your boost ability, you've got the DG2, and you've got the Margwa stuff. And then you combine that with the green barnacles in there to kind of keep your health topped up. And then you do have your equipment to repair Tessie, all that stuff. So you've got a limited number of things to your advantage, but the boss really only like shoots rockets at you. And then I think with the purple beam attack, he tries to like cut you off or something. And then obviously the laser attack at the end. And so there's not a whole lot of unbalanced things in terms of just conceptually, mechanically. I guess what I'm trying to say is the boss never asks you to do something that's unreasonable to do in Tessie. And I'm going to go ahead and start putting a little asterisk there, because when we look at the actual implementation of that, especially in the pre-nerfed boss fight, I feel like that is not an accurate statement. This is again kind of my personal feelings here. I felt as though the rockets coming in were super punishing, especially as a solo player, because as solo you are driving Tessie, you cannot armor plate up, which means that if you take damage and you get get out of armor, you have to like get out of Tessie to replate or switch seats to replate, which just is very clunky and a not very well balanced mechanic. And then on top of that, if you had the laser attack, it was a guaranteed break of Tessie, which is still a very difficult thing to kind of overcome. And specifically, what I noticed, at least personally, kind of the downward spiral of this boss fight before it was nerfed was when Tessie broke. Everything could go really well. You could be healing with those barnacles really well. You could be hitting the boss. The boss, like I said, it's not that mechanically complicated, all right? You just ram into it, purple beam, and then you shoot it as it's stunned. The laser attack's going, you gotta boost into it, make sure you're at a good position for that. But it got to the point where, especially in that third phase laser attack and all the zombies and the Zursa, even though I didn't really find the Zursa all difficult, it got to a point where, those missiles destroyed Tessie so quickly, the laser attack destroyed Tessie so quickly, and you would be trying to cancel out the laser attack with a boost right when missiles are happening, and as you're boosting, it would make it really difficult to dodge those missiles, so it was this downward spiral of, hey, I'm boosting into the boss to negate the laser beam attack, therefore I'm going to get pelted by missiles as soon as I land. But if I decide, okay, I'm not going to go after the laser attack, I'm not going to cancel the laser attack, I'm just going to dodge the missiles instead, well then you'd be dodging missiles, and then the laser attack would be lasering you, and you can't hide behind a pillar because, well, there's missiles, and so it's going to attack you. So it felt as though damage was inevitable and unavoidable, and Tessie broke, and then because you were already taking damage from Tessie, especially as a solo, as a driver, Tessie had to break somehow, so you would naturally be low on armor or health when Tessie broke. But then if there were missiles still in the air, because, you know, you were being attacked or the laser was still there, it's still attacking you, it would make for this 1-2 punch of Tessie broke, oh, you're out, and if you don't immediately do an Ether Shroud, either the laser or the missile is going to bring you down. Now, luckily, they did nerf this. They made the missiles a lot slower, a lot more easier to dodge. I think they made the reset on the laser a little bit longer. They made it so that, at least in solo, you took less damage as you were driving it, which I think is one of the best changes out there. I think that was a really, really big one. And then, of course, they have the barnacles respawning, which, you know, is nice. Now, originally, when they made these nerfs or these changes, I put out a video saying that they might have gone too far. It might have been nerfed too much. I still need to revisit it. I need to beat it in Cursed on round 60, which I'm really terrified of because they rebuffed it in the Cursed mode, so I'm really afraid of that. But with Golden Armor, I've heard it's a lot better. But I am still getting a lot of comments saying that you guys are struggling with it, even in directed mode, that you guys are struggling with it. I wonder if they like didn't nerf something in directed mode. I want to look back at my footage and see what that's like. But I'm almost on the fence now of like, maybe it's actually where it should be. Maybe it's not too easy anymore. So I think that might be an upcoming video, just retesting how I feel about that. I think we were just so, at least I was so on edge. I was practicing the boss, practicing. Oh my goodness, I need to beat this. I need to get a guide out. And then they nerfed it, and we were just so hyper ready to go that maybe we were just on the top of our game and it felt really easy. But I'm curious to see what it's like now after a month or two of this being out and be like, okay, how does it actually play now? Just fresh right from the get-go, because I think I'm gonna find it to be in a decent spot, at least compared to Caltheris. Caltheris is similar, where I feel like mechanically I don't have a lot of problems with this boss fight. The comparison that I really like to make, and I think works really well for Caltheris, is that I think Caltheris is most like the Z-Rex. The Z-Rex has a lot of health, very tiny little critical point, and you are constantly running away. You're constantly dodging because it's constantly chasing after you really, really quickly. The difference, however, and I think this makes a big difference, is in the arena. The arena for the Z-Rex is very big, it's flat, and it's open. And those boulders in the Z-Rex arena allow you to kind of weave around them to gain some distance between you and the Z-Rex. And if you have, you know, Tribologist, especially in Black Ops 6, but even Hotfoot was the big thing for me in this boss fight in the Z-Rex. You could run across the arena and really get a lot of time to put some good heavy damage on the Z-Rex. But here in Black Ops 7 for Astra, Malorum, and Caltheris, I feel as though Caltheris is still chasing after you, and even with like a Hotfoot, if you were to run all the way across the map, Caltheris is so fast, and more importantly, the arena is so small that is not even going to be that big of a deal. It's not that big of an advantage. Plus, there's that elevation change with the staircase in that main area of this arena, which makes this whole fight feel very claustrophobic. So if you were to take the Z-Rex boss fight and shrink it down, shrink the arena down, and then make the half of the arena elevated with stairs, I feel like that's how Caltheris plays, and personally, I'm not the biggest fan. I really should have been more vocal about this. I love the Z-Rex. I think the Z-Rex is so cool. Maybe it's because it was like the first dinosaur we got, and we'd always wanted a dinosaur boss fight in zombies in some way, shape, or form, but compared to Patient 13 and the Guardian, and even, maybe not the Tomb, but at least Patient 13 and the Guardian, I feel like the Z-Rex was a little bit kind of lame. Yes, you could have it eat the toxic zombies and have the weak spots on its belly, which is really cool, but outside of that, I feel like there wasn't a lot of depth behind it. Now, granted, when you look at Patient 13 and the Guardian, depth it might not be the first word that comes to mind, but what I love about something like Patient 13 is the amount of variety of attacks, ways to dodge, and ways to deal with the boss. For example, if you're somebody who just hates the second phase of Patient 13 and you really want to eliminate those tentacles as fast as you can, you could put on Deadwire on one of your guns, and he's weak to Deadwire on those phases, and boom, just get rid of him. If you are somebody who gets really nervous about the one-hit down phase, the charge up phase, the wipe attack, in the third phase, that blue charge attack, then you could put on Shadow Rift, and then boom, you're going to deal extra damage to his eyes and cancel that attack out even faster. Plus, you get rid of the amalgam even faster too, which is really good. Or if you wanted kind of a more general purpose, which is what I decided to go to, you could put on Napalm Burst, and that makes him really weak in the first phase, as well as the in-between phases of him. It's a shorter time period, but in my opinion, it makes a bigger difference. So you have this like extra level of strategy going into it. Plus, he's got his tentacle attacks, he's got his grab attack, obviously the wipe attack. They're all really well telegraphed. There's more of a face-to-face altercation with Patient 13. Same thing with the Guardian. The Guardian has multiple specific weak points that you can break for critical points. Both of his shoulders, his feet, his chest, and the order you break them matters. If you break his feet first, then that second phase where he's a little bit faster, the arena's a little bit smaller, you're going to be dealing with trying to look up at him and shoot his shoulders and his wrists instead of at his feet. And then all of his attacks, even though there's only like 3 attacks, he's got his jump attack, his stomp attack, and then his like magma shooting attack. You can kind of trick him or goad him into attacking in a specific way by how far away you are. If you're close to him, he'll do his stomp attack nonstop, which is my favorite strategy because it's really easy to dodge that stomp attack. And with the Omni movement, I feel like this attack is just so beautifully done, and this boss is so well done because you're constantly circling him, you're constantly looking at him, constantly around him. And then in the in-between phases, you've got some story and dialogue, and then you've got a wave of zombies, which will drop tons of armor, tons of stuff. You've got the incantations in there to use against the zombies as you're attacking the Guardian too. It works out so well, it's so balanced and so fair, and there's a lot of depth to it. But then when we get to Caltheris, it's kind of like, yes, it's got multiple weak points, but ultimately it's only going to have one critical point, and it doesn't really matter which one you open first, at least I don't think. Not in all the testing that I've noticed. Obviously, it gets more and more attacks as it goes on, but it's got the throwing the rock attack, which is kind of hard to dodge at first in that first phase, but then it's got the ground slam attack, which I really love. I love dodging that ground slam attack. I'm a Metroid Prime fan, so anything to jump over something, you know, I'm a big fan of that. But that's kind of it. And the thing that kind of sucks about that ground slam attack is the fact that because he's so fast, because she's so fast, because she's constantly racing after you like the Z-Rex, I find myself not looking at Caltheris as much as I'm looking at the Guardian or Patient 13, which means that I'm not able to react as quickly as I should be able to, or I think I should be able to the rock throwing animation or the ground slam attack. If the Guardian was replaced, or I guess I should say, if you replaced Caltheris with the Guardian, and if you were constantly circling and looking at Caltheris, as soon as it started throwing a rock, then boom, you knew to kind of like omni move, dodge your way out of that. And then whenever it did a ground slam, you knew to time that right to just jump. And I've heard people, and this is a great point too, there are, I think, different audio cues when she's throwing a rock versus when she's doing a ground slam. I think that's phenomenal. I think that's good. I tend to not hear it because I'm commentating a lot of time, but that's my problem. That's nothing against the game. But also, I think that audio cue is going to be hard to hear for a lot of people between the music and the gunfights. But I also think that audio cue isn't as apparent. I need to look back at the footage before I really say anything. But all I know is that you might mistake a throwing a rock grunt with a ground slam grunt, and the solution to both of those attacks is actually terrible for the opposite attack. So if you think she's doing a ground slam and you jump, but she's actually throwing a rock, well then jumping is the wrong thing to do and you're going to take a bunch of damage. If you think she's throwing a rock and you're going to slide, but she's actually doing a ground slam attack, boom, you're going to fail, and that's really, really bad, and you're going to take a lot of damage. Now, all of this isn't that big of a deal, at least for me personally. If this were the only problem, if this were it, then it'd be kind of like the Z-Rex, where I'm like, okay, like it's fun, it's spectacle, it's nice, it's fun to experience, but it's not all that engaging. But the real problem, as you guys have seen in my live commentaries, is the fact that I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I never, ever get armor to drop from zombies. I never do. And a lot of people pointed out, we think that it's intentional because the armor wall buy is in there. So I think they're kind of pushing you towards, hey, you need to bring in like 50, 60, 70,000 points if you want to keep refreshing your shield. But then no armor plates drop and your whole entire game is based around the armor system and unavoidable damage, and it just doesn't sound all that great from a balancing perspective. A lot of you guys really sympathized with that on my last playthrough of Astra Malorum, so I think that's kind of a universal, yeah, if we're gonna have armor, you gotta provide us with the armor plates. That's just kind of the deal, especially in that third or fourth phase, I should say. As I said, the arena is already super small. It's like the Z-Rex but shrunken, plus that elevation change, and then in the fourth phase, you have those rocks which are really big, and then they have an area of effect around them, and with each phase, Caltheris gets even bigger and bigger, and because she's still so fast, it essentially cuts off a majority of this entire arena to make it really, really tough to avoid any damage. Again, with the armor system, unavoidable damage is somewhat forgiven if you have enough armor plates dropping, but the thing is about that is that unlike the Z-Rex boss fight, because everything is so small and so condensed, I don't feel like it's advantageous for me to just focus on killing zombies. I feel like if I focused on killing zombies and took my attention away from Caltheris, I would miss a ground slam attack, I would miss a rock throwing attack, I would miss her just being super fast. So I feel like I don't have the opportunity to just kill zombies even if they were to drop armor plates. And on top of that, the time in between the phases is super minuscule, probably because there's 4 phases and they want the pacing to be really good. But even if you killed all the zombies in between the phases, like I said, they're not dropping armor for me anyway, but that would be a really nice benefit, having zombies drop armor, having those in between phases last a little bit longer, having any sort of max armor or max ammo power up in between each of your 4-phase gauntlet of a boss. I think that would be great. Obviously, again, it really does feel like they are encouraging you to just come in with tens of hundreds of thousands of points because you've got the ammo cache and the armor wall buy right there. And I know people use that as like a defense of like, oh, well, hey, like they give you the resources you need because you need to bring in all of these points. But if the difference, here's my thoughts. If the difference between me surviving a boss fight or failing a boss fight is just the amount of points that I was able to grind before, personally, I feel like that's a really terrible boss fight. It's pay to win, but in game. It's like, how many points do you have? Okay, well then fine, you'll be able to beat this boss fight. That is super strange. We really haven't seen that before, at least to my recollection. And I don't see how grinding, 50,000, 60,000 points before a boss fight is like the next innovative, let's write a video essay about how genius this boss fight is worthy of a boss fight, We're not going to be sitting back here in 10 years being like, dude, that Caltheris boss fight, man, I love how it makes you just point grind for like 15 minutes before you go into the boss fight. That's peak zombies. Like I don't see anybody having those conversations. And once again, very similar to Ashes of the Damned, with Cursed and with golden armor, these boss fights feel easier. And with tier 4 Pack-a-Punch and Caltheris, it feels even easier. Now, I do highly encourage you to go check out one of my recent Maddox videos where I do try to beat this boss fight, because there are a lot of really good tips and tricks in the comment section. You guys are really good using Toxic Growth, using Frenzied Guard, using the LGM1 and really making sure that's Pack-a-Punched and going in with a lot of points, and using that Wonder Weapon up against the boss to shred its armor. I feel like those are all really good points, and I want to revisit it at some point in time. Hopefully they nerf it. I feel like they are going to nerf it this week. I have a feeling. In some way, shape, or form, whether that's increasing the armor drop rate, whether that's in adding max armors at the end of each phase, I feel like they're going to do something to this. Just be like, the amount of people I've seen super frustrated with this boss fight is more than any other time I've seen. And with that being said, I think there's a lot of people using these type of arguments that I'm about to say here, because I say all of these things, hey, this doesn't feel fair, this doesn't feel fair, and a lot of people will immediately have this reaction, and maybe you guys have typed this out in the comments before I've even finished this, but everybody timestamp this section of the podcast if you see these comments in the comment section below. If you see anybody say, well, I don't think you should be able to beat a boss fight on your first try, or I think it should take you a couple tries to learn a boss fight and to get good at it and then to be able to overcome it. Those two arguments I wholeheartedly agree with. I love failing a boss fight and learning. I love learning different strategies. I mean, guys, like, that's my channel. Are you new here? I love investigating. Ooh, how does this mechanic work? How does that mechanic work? Oh my goodness, smoke grenades work against Oscar. Isn't that fantastic? Like, I love figuring out these niche little things. I love figuring out that blast through on Shatter Blast worked against armor on Astra Malorum here. Like, I love that stuff. I love doing this multiple times. I love the Metroid Prime games, which are some of the best like FPS bosses Well, at least of the like early 2000s, I guess. I am all for a learning curve. And then I've seen people say, well, I don't want everybody to beat a boss fight. I think, bosses need to be a skill check. I think that bad players shouldn't win every single time. Again, wholeheartedly agree. And the thing is, this is what's weird to me. In all of the Reddit posts and all of the Twitter threads and all of the comment sections on all of the videos that I've watched, not a single comment has argued against that. I have seen no comments say, well, I just want to beat the boss fight the first time. Or I've seen no comments be like, well, I don't want to learn the boss fight. I should just win no matter what. I've never seen that anywhere. Obviously, I'm sure someone somewhere maybe have said that, but it is not like this popular opinion. That's not the main mentality that people have. People do like hard boss fight. When you hear boss fight, everybody kind of understands, okay, this is going to be a challenge. I might not win, but I think at the very least, it should be fair. And so if you're one of those people who thinks, well, I want difficulty. I want difficulty, and I'm glad that we're failing. I'm glad that we're failing. I am not against you. I'm not against you in the sense that, like, I don't mind failing. I don't mind having to replay the boss. I don't want to beat this boss on my very first try and have it to never challenge me ever again. That's not what I want. But the small nuance here is that I don't mind losing so long as it feels like it's my fault. I don't mind losing so long as I feel like I could go in next time, learn from my mistakes, and be better. And I think that is the issue at hand. When you died in the pre-nerf Ashes of the Damned boss fight because just a missile one-shot you, even though you were doing your best to dodge and everything, at times it felt like an insta-death just because. And especially here in Astra Malorum, as you've seen in that live commentary, when I am just doing everything I can to avoid all of this damage. Yes, you're human, you're gonna take damage here and there, but then I just ran out of points and I couldn't buy armor. That feels like it's not my fault. Now, technically, of course, like I said, you could get a whole bunch of points and maybe that was the one mistake I did. Okay, cool. We've established that's not what I find fun, but I think we need to have an honest conversation. If you are somebody who wants these boss fights that you fail, are you okay with boss fights with RNG? Are you okay with boss fights that you will fail due to no fault of your own? And I think that's the most important question to answer. Are you okay with the game randomly killing you? Are you okay with playing your absolute best, having the perfect reactions, making the perfect decisions, doing the executing what the boss is asking you perfectly, but still failing? And that is a genuine question, because I know for a fact that some people are okay with that. I know for a fact some people do want that challenge, even if it is unfair, even if it is outside of their own skill or execution or expertise. I know some people want that, but I'm here to say that I don't like that. I think that if you are practiced enough, if you are learned enough, if you know the tells of the boss, if you react perfectly to exactly what the boss is doing, you should be able to win 100% of the time. And I just want to reiterate that. I know that 100% of the time might have just been like getting your attention here. Let me rephrase. Once you have learned, once you've failed the boss a couple times, once you've understood what the boss is asking you to do, once you've learned their attacks, once you've learned how to dodge, then and only then, once you execute perfectly, once you play perfectly, I think you should be able to win 100% of the time. Because if you execute perfectly, if you play perfectly and you still fail, that, in my opinion, is the cardinal sin any video game could do. Failure that is outside of your responsibility is not good design. If you do manage to go down or die in a boss fight, there should be some part of you that says, I could have done this better. But from what I've seen from the pre-nerf Ashes of the Damned and the current Astra Malorum, as well as the Lease Keeper's Challenge, but I think we all agree that one's just kind of garbage. From what I've been able to tell, it feels as though players just don't feel responsible for their failure in this boss fight. Now, let's not overcorrect that statement here. Let's kind of bring it back here. Yes, you absolutely have agency. If your movement's bad, if you're making wrong decisions, if you're not dodging the things you should be dodging, you're absolutely responsible for taking damage. Like, I'm not saying it's completely impossible to avoid the damage or any damage, even though it is unlikely just to the nature of the chaotic gameplay of zombies. You still have agency over how much damage you take. Absolutely. And personally, I think the third phase of this boss is actually like the perfect equilibrium of that balance. I think that second phase of Caltheris's body shape, that third phase of the boss, she takes a little bit longer to throw the rocks, but she does the ground slam attack, and she's a little bit smaller, so you can kind of avoid her dodge, or avoid her and dodge around her a little bit more fairly. I think that is is like the perfect balance where it was really challenging for me at first. Even getting past those first 2 of her phases, that was difficult for me. But once you start learning that, once you start getting the knowledge of exactly where you should go, how you should move, that 3rd phase specifically was really, really satisfying. It's only in that 4th phase where it's amped up a little bit more with the area of effect denial, as well as she's a little bit faster and bigger, and of course the lack of any armor drops, where I just think that kind of house of cards crumbles, and therefore it feels like it's not my fault. Now, the difficult thing about that might sound really nice, but here's the confusing thing, and here's the thing that the developers need to figure out, or are constantly trying to figure out. How do you know if it's actually your fault versus it just being unfair? Because a lot of the times, especially if you took a brand new person and threw them into just the base regular gameplay of zombies, especially like the classic games with the 2-hit down and the double swipe, windmill swipe zombies of Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 1, I think a lot of the time, if they don't know training, they might feel like going down isn't their fault. Because like I said, zombies is kind of chaotic by its nature. You've got zombies kind of spawning all around you. They're not really coming at you from any uniform way. Training is just such a difficult concept to teach and to understand. Once you understand it, the game becomes monumentally easier. Even in modern zombies, especially in modern zombies, actually, once you have that damage scaling, like training zombies is very important, but it's something that the game doesn't inherently teach you, which is really weird because it's kind of the foundation of the mode. And so if you just plopped somebody in on round 50 with no zombie experience, they might have some FPS experience and they might try to run around a little bit, but if they don't know how to train, they might feel like going down isn't their fault. But us on the other side, we know how to train. We know that if you just went down just simply by training with regular zombies, then yeah, it was probably your fault. You probably did something wrong. But how does that get communicated to the player? How can we get players to look back on their gameplay and go, ooh, I zigged when I should have zagged, or oh, I dodged instead of that, or I slid instead of did that, and that was a mistake. And well, how did I know that that's what I should have done? And how am I going to change that for the future? Like I said, having that audible sound cue of her like grunting or whatever for the ground slam or the rock throwing animation, I think that's fantastic. I think that's great. I think some things distract from it. Like I said, the small arena, the constant running away. So I think that gets a little foggy, but in principle, those are the sorts of things that I really like to see. And I've thought about this. And so, yes, I do think Caltheris just needs just a tiny little tweak. Just drop some more armor. I think that's all you really need. Maybe some max armors and that stuff. And I think it's beatable. And I guess I should say, just because, and here's another thing I believe, I guess, just because a boss fight is beatable, just because you can beat a boss fight, even if you can beat a boss fight consistently, I still don't think that makes it a fair boss fight. There are plenty of video games with unfair mechanics, but are very beatable just because of the balance of everything. Fairness isn't a difficulty slider. And I think that may be why some people hear some arguments of, oh, hey, I think this is unfair. But then people counter that with, hey, well, you could do it like this, or hey, you could overcome it like that, or hey, I like the difficulty of that sort of thing. But fairness and difficulty, while they might overlap, but they don't necessarily, they're not mutually exclusive. Just because something is unfair doesn't make it difficult, and just because something is fair doesn't make it easy. There's a whole lot of nuance to it, so I always love the conversations about this. So I don't think this is going to last too long, but what I've found, and kind of an anecdote that I wanted to share that I like sharing, is that last year I did a lot of Easter egg runs. I did a lot of testing with different weapons and attachments and how does it do against this, against that. And the Patient 13 and the Guardian, like I said, they're really fair. They're really well balanced, at least at the time of their launch. But I want to remind you that it wasn't until Double Tap came out, and specifically we figured out Double Standard worked wonders, that then those boss fights got really, really easy. People were dying to Patient 13 and the Guardian very consistently. It's just that those two bosses were never rebalanced once they essentially got half their health thanks to Double Standard. But I loved going back and testing all of the different attachments and all the different things that came out in those Easter eggs. I would either do a high round and calculate the DPS, or I would do an Easter egg and calculate the DPS. But right now, it feels as though it's kind of flipped to Black Ops 6, where I feel like the high rounds are really, really fun in Black Ops 7. I love them so much, especially in Cursed. We're about to talk about Cursed. But then the Easter eggs of Black Ops 7, well, obviously, Ashes of the Damned doesn't really care about your weapon. You know, you could go in there with a knife and still get that beat pretty easily. And so that's not really good for testing. So the only map we have to test out different weapons is Caltheris and Astra Malorum. And like I just explained to you, that's just not one of my favorite things to do here. So I'm in this kind of sad spot where I really like these main quests, I really like the ideas of these boss fights, but they're just a little bit overtuned, and I want to play these games with these guns, and I just can't do it. And that might just be a Doughnuts problem, a content creator problem. But I mean, that does kind of trickle down to you, where you guys aren't getting that content either. And I know this is the last I'll talk about the boss fights, but I know I've seen a lot of people, and I was one of these people flying this flag too, so I apologize, but lots of people saying, oh, challenging boss fights are good because they encourage replayability for you to overcome that challenge. And I agree to an extent, absolutely, but I'll say that those boss fights are only replayable if they're fair. If they're unfair, if they're random, then I would be willing to bet that most people are not going to want to play that again, because I have seen this sentiment that I also share, that these boss fights, well, at least pre-patch Ashes of the Damned and, Astra Malorum, once you beat those Easter eggs, instead of feeling like satisfaction and yes, I overcame that, and boy, I can't wait to practice that and get better, instead, I'm left with this, oh my goodness, thank goodness that's over, and I never want to do that again. I have no idea how to gauge how popular that sentiment is. I just know that that's how I feel, and I can only speak for myself. If you love these bosses, if you love how difficult and challenging, even if they're unfair, that's all you. I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you're eating. This is my podcast, this is my channel. I'm going to talk about what I want and how I feel, because there are just as many other people at the end of the spectrum being like, Black Ops 6 was perfect, these are way too hard, or, I had trouble even in Black Ops 6, so these are impossible. And I disagree with that too. I feel like people don't give themselves enough credit. I think Zombies is a game where most players can get really, really good. I don't think the skill floor is all that high, or all that, I don't think the skill floor is all that high. I don't think there's a high barrier to entry in Zombies. Well, training and movement, I think that's the only really high barrier to entry. Once you know how to train, once you know how to move around the zombies, I think you've got like 90% of everything you can experience in Zombies unlocked. But transitioning from the boss fights and these Easter eggs, I think this is a really good segue here. Matthew says that Cursed mode saved this game for him. And of course, I got a ton of really good comments about Cursed. I will throw them up on the screen. Hopefully I've been throwing up other comments on the screen too. And of course, it wouldn't be a Doughnuts video without some terrible, terrible takes. So I want to give you my controversial opinions about the Cursed mode. Let me just say, I think Cursed, Directed, Survival Maps, and the Standard mode, I don't see how I'm going to fully enjoy a Zombies game without all 4 of these modes going forward. And then save and quit, the HUD customization, like there's so many basic things about these modes or these games that I just love so much, and Cursed is now fully in that slot. I was so worried. I was so worried about Cursed. I was like hyper fixating on Cursed when this game released, because I was so afraid that people would sleep on it, or they would be distraught because, oh, it's not the classics mode that we all wanted. But I am so happy to see so much love for Cursed, that I put out a poll and I asked, hey, did you guys want to just play Standard or just play Cursed? And it was nearly 50-50. I think that's phenomenal, but, and as strange as this sounds, I feel like Cursed is simultaneously one of the most underrated things on YouTube, at least talking about it, but also some of the most overrated things on YouTube, because I think what that comes from is what I adore and love about Cursed is not what other people love about Cursed, and what other people love about Cursed I don't like about Cursed. So I've seen a lot of people, I've seen this comment here and there where they love my channel for stats and graphs and gameplay and entertainment, but when it comes to my opinions, I have the worst opinions, which I feel like is every Zombies YouTuber. Seriously, the more you look into a zombie YouTuber's opinions, the more you're gonna be like, what? Like, that's crazy. So we all have such a variety of opinions. That's what makes this game so fun and so cool. Everybody lashes onto something different, despite that feeling of, oh, everybody loves this or everybody loves that. Like, we are such a big community and such a varied community, between the culture of Black Ops 1 zombies to Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3 to Black Ops 4 to now Cold War. And like, even Cold War has a different community than Black Ops 6, which you wouldn't think, but it does. And then Modern Warfare Zombies is very different. And then you got the Infinite Warfare people. Like, we love so many different things. And then you've got us, dozens of us who really, really like World War II zombies. There are so many different opinions. I don't mean to discredit. I don't mean to undermine. I don't mean to like disregard anybody's opinions. But like I said, I can only tell you what I think and what I experience and kind of give you my perspective. But I also would like to believe, and I've seen some comments here there saying like, oh, Doughnuts, actually, you know what? I never thought about this that way. So hopefully with an open mind and some honest discussion from everybody, you can kind of see where I'm coming from, at the very least acknowledge how some other people might have different opinions. But when it comes to Cursed, I just want to say I love the relics. I love hunting the relics. I love discovering the relics. I love the relic challenges. I love using the relics and trying to figure out the best way to use the relics, especially now that we have tier 4 Pack-a-Punch. A lot of people say say that, oh, once you have tier 4 unlocked with all the relics you want, that it kills the relic quest, and that might be the case for some, but for me, I'm always excited to see, ooh, how else can I change up the game? And more importantly, how else can I change the game to get to tier 4 or to tier 4 Pack-a-Punch, tier 3 cursed, so that way I can play in this style or in this way or use this weapon or use this strategy. So I love that aspect of it. The Halo Skulls comparison is very comparable, but the reason I love the relics so much is because of golden armor and tier 4 Pack-a-Punch. Ultra rarity, I'll be honest with you, the whole rarity system, I don't feel really anything for. I've seen people say, I hate rarities. I hate them so much. I feel nothing. I feel nothing for rarities. You go up to a machine like 3 times in a game and it increases your damage. I don't see how that's a negative, but I don't see how that's a positive either. So I don't have any strong feelings towards the rarity system, but what I do have strong feelings for is regenerating armor, because armor and damage scaling is really big for me, and weapon damage and DPS is really big for me, and different variety of weapons and different Pack-a-Punch effects, and that's exactly what tier 4 Pack-a-Punch does, and it's secret stuff that we have to discover on our own, and I absolutely love it. Those, like, around 50, 60 games, you're seeing me post those hour-long games that I'm playing with all these different weapons. I can't stop playing. It's because I'm so addicted. I love training. I love the lack of boss zombie spam, which we'll talk about. I love the golden armor and how it balances out the armor system. I love the tier 4 Pack-a-Punch and how crazy the guns are. Is it a little too strong? It very well may be. It might be a little Cold War levels of strong, but you know what? For a bonus mode, I'm kind of okay with it right now. Plus, it makes all the other guns really strong. I need to do a little bit more realistic testing, because right now I'm only testing like the broken, overpowered guns. But I love how it dynamically changes the core of how you play this game and how you interact with this sandbox. And then to add on top of that, the trade-offs you get in order to get those benefits. For example, I've been taking off the mystery box and I've been disabling the power-ups with those base relics, those tier 1 relics, whatever they're called. Grim relics, that's what they're called, the Grim relics. But I recently just unlocked the bus relic, meaning that if I run the bus relic, I could take off all of the Grim relics and have my power-ups back and have my mystery box back. And I just love that. And that changes how I play and interact with the game. Now I could get tier 4 Pack-a-Punch on mystery box weapons, because now it's not disabled anymore. But if I'm doing a boss fight or an Easter egg quest, I'm going to want to take off the bus relic because I don't want the big boss to regenerate health. So now I might want to disable the mystery box, or if we discover another relic, I might want to use that instead. I love how this just adds to the sandbox of the very game itself. It's not like augments where, oh, as soon as you buy a perk, here how it's going to change in a little different way. This is like core elements of the game that are fundamentally different, and the potential of this mode is so big. It's indescribable how big this mode could get. Right now, a lot of the relics are just kind of disabling things like no power-ups, 4 perk limit, no self-revives, no ammo crates, no mystery box, but we are starting to get a little bit more of those things. Like, I love the enemy regeneration. I think that's fantastic. Supposedly there's like a one that makes you have a different weapon every 100 kills or something. I think that's pretty interesting. There's one that removes perks every 100 kills you get, which, like, it might not sound very feasible for like a high round or for like any sort of Easter egg run, but for like a YouTube challenge, just for not even a YouTube challenge, just for you to have fun with the game yourself. Yeah, that's an extra challenge for you to do. I'm sure there's like a Dark Ops calling card for that or something. Reach round 50, you know, with this relic enabled, so that way every 100 kills you're getting rid of a perk, so you have to constantly buy all of those perks like that, and then you got the 4 perk limit on there, or you don't, and it's just the amount of things that they could do with this is so good. I do worry about how many relics they're going to add per map. They added 6. They added 6 relics for Astra Malorum, and if we get even 3 more DLC maps out there, that would be your 4 DLC maps for your base standard zombies game. That is 18 more cursed relics, which means that you may very well be able to get to tier 4 Pack-a-Punch with just the Grim relics. I don't know, I need to do the math on that, but I don't know if that's going to be overkill. I don't know if that's going to be too much, but what I'm worried about is that not every map is going to release with relics, or not every map is going to have relics. Not every map is going to have 6 relics, which might be even more disappointing because, oh my goodness, what's the point of doing this on Cursed if there's no relics, and blah, 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 all that sort of, you know, community sentiment stuff, which is very real. I'm very hopeful. That's one of those things that they're going to need to execute on. I don't know if people are talking about it. I might tweet about it soon, but I think that's going to be an important part to new maps and reinvigorating the relic searches, which is also why I also love these relics, because I love these hunts. I love looking for these things. It is getting to the point where I'm a little concerned, especially after the release of Astra Astra Malorum because I think it would be dishonest of me not to mention this, but I have gotten the 2 of the Wicked Relics on Ashes of the Damned, the one that you need to do without shooting your weapon or using equipment, as well as the one that requires you to ring all of the phones before round 60. Those 2, fantastic, fun, love them. Even the one doing the main quest after round 60, I think that's just a little tedious, but you know what? It's a challenge mode, so I'm gonna do that one eventually. It's just a time commitment, and that's not that bad. But then we have Astra Malorum, and if you don't know, this cursed mode is advertised as a challenge mode, even though I don't think it really is a challenge mode. But the first relic is getting 20 kills with a pistol that spawns on round 20, except it doesn't always work. Something about it might be bugged or glitched. If you do it really specifically exactly on round 20 and that's it, I think it works pretty consistently, but also with like an insta kill. The round 40 relic on Astra Malorum requires you to get a melee kill on Oscar after round 40 while your wisp is attacking him. Now that doesn't sound that bad, but it's absolutely miserable. I would highly recommend checking out my video where I do it because man, it took me multiple attempts, multiple gobblegums, especially because you need to be out of Oscar's line of sight, so you essentially need Ether Shroud, but then Wisp T cannot be the one to do the killing blow either. You have to actually get a melee kill, so you have this really small window of opportunity, and it is just so much different. I mean, we went from Ashes of the Damned being like, shoot these 3 targets, or get a kill with the Doppelgast on the jump pad, or melee Azursa, just melee Azursa, that's it. And then ring these 5 telephones to round 60. All of a sudden, the round 41 is you need to use these perks, these field upgrades on this enemy that has a whole ton of health, and it has to be in this specific way. You've got to be jumping on one leg with your hand behind your back, and you need to be singing happy birthday. Like, it's just so crazy. And then there's one that you can do, but we haven't figured out how it works. Even after all of this time and so many different recorded completions, there's a spreadsheet of completions for this next one. The candles, the one I'm going to make a video about this one probably next, we'll see. On Astra Malorum, there are sets of candles in the speed cola room that you have to put out with PhD Flopper in a specific order, but the order changes every round, and you're already at round 60. And even though we've had multiple completions, and like I said, there's a whole spreadsheet table full of completions and data, we don't know how it works. And so we went from, hey, just beat the main quest on round 60, you're good to go. Hey, just ring these phones, you're good to go, to like, I don't know, even though you've done it, we don't know how you did it, but you did it, and here's how to replicate it. So there's absolutely an aspect of this that is too far. But again, this is very similar to the boss fight mentality here. That is kind of what we've been asking for. I personally feel that with Black Ops 6, well, really with just Black Ops 6, we are at the cusp of the maximum complexity and fairness that these Easter eggs and boss fights can be. And here's what I've said for the longest time, ever since Cold War, right? When you're trying to do an Easter egg, the amount of time it takes for somebody to figure it out or solve it is at least some part in some way tied to how much sense it makes. If something doesn't make a lot of sense, maybe people will randomly stumble upon it, but in terms of replicating it, that is going to be the challenge. That was the big challenge with the Oscar relic on Astra Malorum. Okay, what do you need? Because originally we thought you needed like ammo mods and elemental pop and all of these things, and then the ray gun, and that wasn't the case. And there is a certain point where Easter eggs are so random and so unfair that they're not fun anymore. And I think the Revelations rock step is the best example of that, or even just the first step of Revelations, where you need to figure out where to bring the keeper to do its ritual. That tiny little piece, if you didn't know, there's like a tiny little piece of geometry that you wouldn't even see normally where you need to bring the keeper to in order to start the Easter egg. And then there's tiny rocks outside of the map that you need to shoot. They just look like rubble. They just look like regular set dressing. And I think everybody agreed Revelations that took a step too far. It took us 9 days to figure out that main quest. It was too much. But on the other end of the spectrum, if every step makes sense, if every step is logical, then naturally we're going to figure it out pretty quickly, and we're going to be able to replicate it and get it down. But then people are going to complain, oh my goodness, this is so easy, where's the difficulty? As you've seen for the past however many years, that's what everybody is saying. So I feel like in Black Ops 7, the boss fights and these relic quests are kind of Treyarch's way of being like, well, hey, you want a difficulty, you wanted some crazy unlock requirements and some crazy Easter eggs, here is your optional mode. You don't even need all of these to get to tier 4 Pack-a-Punch. You just need some of them. So for the rest of them, especially for the DLC maps, they're going to be really punishing and really convoluted and really just over the top, because that's what everybody has been praying and asking them for. We have literally been asking for this. We've been asking for complexity. We've been asking for difficulty. And so now that we've gotten it, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, this is unfair, this is unfun. And I'll agree, yeah, there's some things that are unfair and unfun about it, but that's what we asked for. We might have not specifically said unfair or unfun, but you can only be so fair. You can only be so fun before it turns that corner. And I think, here's what I've always said. I would rather have something be easy and fair than difficult and unfair. I wholeheartedly believe there is a difficult fair option out there, absolutely, but I care way more about fairness than I do about difficulty. And I think deep down most people do too, and at this point in time it feels as though some of these relics are just straight up unfair. To add on top of that, there are several relics that we haven't even found yet, and it's been months. I do believe we can see what they do and what challenge they're going to require once you unlock the portal, but that's it. I also think that, well, Treyarch has shown what items they are, but I think we know in the code what item they are. The challenge of the challenge portal, like the actual relic portal in game, we know that challenge, as well as what the effect of the relic does, which I'm not going to spoil for you here. But that is all we actually know about these. And it's at this point in time where either they are going to be something so stupid simple that we just, for some reason, haven't randomly stumbled upon it yet, which is kind of interesting. And every day that happens, every day that's a thing, the more people are looking for the stuff, I think the least likely that is to be the case. And I think that's completely fair, but there might be ways around this. There might be a middle ground that we need to look for. I think one of the simplest ways is once you unlock a relic, maybe having the relic requirements be said straight up in black and white in the menu might just be the best way of going about it. Sort of like how once you unlock a Dark Ops challenge, you kind of know what the Dark Ops challenge is because it says it in the menu. I think that would be really good, but if you do that, I think the reason they don't do that is because I think if you did, then it would be able to be data mined. Not entirely sure how that works, but that's where my first thought went. And so we're just stuck in between a rock and a hard place. But outside of the relics and outside of the amazing ultra rarity Pack-a-Punch tier 4 abilities, I am kind of split on the other things about Cursed. I really do miss my damage numbers, but that really is just personally, I miss having the DPS spreadsheet be super accurate. I can only extrapolate from where it might be based on the last time a gun one-shots zombies in the head, and then I can extrapolate from there. But outside of that, I do miss the damage numbers because of the testing and all that stuff. The health bars would be nice too for that and some Easter egg steps, but that's not that big of a deal. The minimap I don't really care about, but the thing that I'm probably the most split on is starting with the pistol. On one hand, I love starting with the pistol. I think it's fun. I think it's zombies. I think it fits right in. It feels so darn good. I love spawning in, here's a pistol, go have fun. That feels like zombies, that feels so great, but dang it, I also miss having whatever gun I want. And I genuinely don't know how to resolve that. I genuinely don't know how to make both sides of my brain happy on this, because I want to go in, I want to test out this gun, like I want to test out the Ion against the boss fight on Astra Malorum in Cursed with tier 4 Pack-a-Punch, but in order to do so, I'm going to need to hit the box with the right augment setup, which might take me forever. It might, especially at the DLC season, after all, 30 DLC guns are in the box, now you're going to have a 1 in like 2% chance to get whatever gun you actually want at the end of the year, especially the DLC guns once they add them in. It's just going to be so hard to get the weapon you want out of the box. It's going to be so tedious and so annoying. People are already upset about not having the ballistic knife or the different melee weapons or the DLC guns. And all I could say is like, well, that's kind of exactly what you asked for, isn't it? Like, you were excited with starting with a pistol, which meant that like, if there's a DLC gun that's not in the game yet, you're not going to get it. Like, that's kind of the point, you were beholden to whatever weapons were on that map. So you reap what you sow. But of course, we've all had that thought of like having a wall weapon that is specific to your loadout, like a loadout wall buy or something like that, a la Buried or Warzone even, hoo-hoo. But I felt like if that was the case, I feel like if there was a loadout wall buy, then I just wouldn't hit the box. I wouldn't, hit the wall weapons or anything except for the Akitas. I feel like having any way of getting exactly the weapon you want completely undermines the entire premise of starting with a pistol. Now, I could see in the future, this is just a prediction, maybe once they add in some more relics, maybe there's a tier 4 Cursed where, you get your golden armor, you get your ultra rarity weapons, you get your tier 4 Pack-a-Punch, but then at tier 4 Cursed, maybe there's a, hey, you spawn in with your loadout, with your weapon, with your equipment. Maybe that is like the highest tier of cursed where you could start with whatever you want, but you have to use all of these different relics. So I don't know, maybe that could be the case. Could be something for fun down the future. I don't know. But I say that because as much as I love starting with a pistol, I think if you were to tell me right now, hey, would you rather start with a pistol forever or start with a loadout weapon forever? I think I'm going with a loadout weapon. As strange as it sounds, as disappointing as it is for you zombie purists out there, I just love experimenting with weapons, and it might have something to do with the DPS spreadsheet, but I've always been this way. I've always loved using all the different variety of weapons. I love spinning the mystery box and getting weapons. We all love spinning the mystery box and getting different weapons. So I love it. It's not, and here's the other thing. Using different weapons is not exclusive to the camo grind. Using different weapons can be down to how these different weapons feel and how they perform and how they are during a high round strategy versus a boss fight. You might want an SMG if you're training. You might want an assault rifle if you're going up against a boss fight. You might want this special shotgun that's really good right now until they nerf it, and then, oh, they've buffed this other gun, so now I want to run that one. Like, weapon variety with the loadout system is 10 times better than starting with a pistol. I know people have this weird way of making it seem like, oh, if you start with a pistol, you actually have so much more weapon variety. And I just gotta say, I have not experienced this great weapon variety because every time I play Cursed, I use a pistol, I get to wherever the Akita is, and that's all I use. While, of course, getting like a different wall weapon or a mystery box gun all the way geared up to Pack Punch Tier 4. Now, I know that might be because of the point system, and we'll talk about that, don't you worry. But in terms of just starting with the pistol, every single game is exactly the same. I spawn with the pistol, I go get the Akita, and then I go get whatever gun I want. And that, by the way, it's exactly how I played Classic Zombies. I'm gonna ruin Classic Zombies for you here. In Black Ops 3, I would knife everybody round 1, I would shoot everybody 8 times round 2 and then melee them. I would buy the RK5, shoot them once, melee them all the way through round 6, and then I would either get a wall weapon and put Deadwire on it wherever I was training, or I'd hit the mystery box for a random gun that I wanted to use that game. That's it. Every single game. And most of the time, I would hit an Immolation Liquidation to get exactly the gun I wanted because I didn't switch it out. I wanted exactly the PPSH on Gorod Krovi, and I was going to spin the box until I got the PPSH on Gorod Krovi. Is it my fault? Absolutely. But just like it's my fault for always picking the same wall weapon, it's also the player's fault for picking the same gun every time with the loadout system. This is going to be such a deep cut here, but the debate with the pistols versus a loadout, a lot of it was on weapon variety and like, hey, why wouldn't you just spawn in with the best weapon in the game? Apart from the fact that the best weapon in the game is not objective, it's subjective, and it's different for everybody, and everyone might have a different thing. Plus, you might just want to try a different gun, just, I don't know, maybe for fun. But on top of that, there was this argument. And by the way, I just want to preface this. I don't like this argument. I think this argument is shallow, and I don't think it really captures the essence of what we were arguing about here. But as we were debating, starting with a pistol versus having a loadout weapon, so many people said that if you want to start with a pistol, just start with a pistol. And remember, I don't like that argument. I think that misses the point of starting with a pistol. And I wholeheartedly believed that. I believed that for years, since Cold War. I was like, nah, it's not the same. It's not the same. And then we get here to Cursed and they spawn us in with a pistol. And the big difference is that it's just the Jaeger 45 and it's just starting with a pistol. Like it's no different. It's exactly what everybody was saying all these years, just starting with a pistol. So for all of this time in Cold War, in Black Ops 6, yeah, you could have just been starting with a pistol. That's exactly what this game is doing. That's what Cursed is doing. So, when I realized that, it kind of took me out of the experience a little bit where I'm like, oh, like if I wanted this starting with a pistol experience, I could have just done it because the pistol still has as much damage as it normally does. It still kills, it has more damage than like the 1911 of games past. You still got rarities, you still got the Pack-a-Punch levels. It is just starting with a pistol. So now Treyarch themselves is essentially saying like, you guys want to start with a pistol? Okay, we're just gonna start with a pistol. And as I said, I want to remind you before all your hate comments start coming, remember what I said when I first started talking about this? I love starting with a pistol. I love starting off weak and then going and trading wall weapons to get the wall weapon I want and finding the wall weapon or the weapon that I want to use in the mystery box. I do like that. I think that's zombies. I think that's fun, but that illusion to me is kind of broken when the solution is literally just starting with a pistol, which we could have done all of these years with no alteration to the game mode whatsoever. And so for as much as I like starting with the pistol, like I said, I'm kind of disillusioned now. I'm kind of like, well, do I even want to start with the pistol? Because like I said, I'd rather have whatever gun I want. So the novelty of starting with the pistol is kind of gone for me. These are not my full thoughts on this topic. This is in the moment. This is mid figuring out what I like, dislike about Cursed. And maybe this will give you a different perspective. And like I said, having that loadout weapon, even if it were in Cursed, even if you start with a pistol, having that loadout weapon, it would essentially be the exact same thing as starting with your loadout weapon anyway, because then all I would do was just play the game until I got to that loadout weapon and then buy it off the wall or buy it from whatever. And so it's gotten me thinking, like, what do I really like about starting with pistol? And is that really as valuable as being able to use whatever gun and explore that gun and have fun with that gun and just experiment with that variety? Because like I said, I have 10, 11, 12 times more variety in the standard mode because I could choose any gun I want, way more than I do in the cursed mode. Like, it's not even close. On top of that, the point system is very interesting. I think so many people associate me with somebody who just doesn't like the classic point system, who prefers the new point system, and I just gotta say that's not true. I think both systems are interesting. I think both systems achieve different feelings or tones or player behaviors. I just think I see the benefits of the new point system, and I understand where they're coming from with the new point system, and I appreciate it from a design perspective. I have always said, and you can go back to all my point system videos, I've always said that the classic point system does a great job of giving the player agency. The player has the power to earn a lot of currency on their own. It is up to them. If you are 50 points short of a door, you can shoot the zombie in the leg 5 times with your pistol and earn that cash, earn that points, and open the door or get Pack-a-Punch or buy the perk. And that amount of player freedom has always been the positive thing about the old point system. A lot of people brought up when you go down, when you join a game late, when you die out and you respawn back in, having that old point system with weak weapons give you a ton of points allows you to get caught up a little bit faster. Those are all the positives, the best positives about the classic point system, and they are on full display here, especially because shotguns give you points for every pellet. Even if that weren't the case, you have some really weak SMGs on the wall, like the Carbon 57 on Astra Malorum and the Raiden 45k, I think is on the wall in Ashes of the Damned and Farm, both of which give you a ton of points. A lot of people love to associate that with weapon variety and, oh, you could use different weapons and all that stuff, even though everybody's just using the Akita, but hey, it's technically variety. But that being said, I think this point system would work, and I think it felt very good at the start of Cursed. However, I think the gaps or the cracks in this system are starting to show, and I think a lot of people may be kind of being exposed at maybe being a little bit of a hypocrite, but a lot of people are saying that the quote-unquote problem with the point system in Cursed is not with the point system, it's with the prices of everything. Because if you don't know, golden armor is 45,000 points. So you have your 4,000 points for tier 2 armor, your 10,000 points for tier 3 armor, and then an additional 45,000 points for golden armor. And in Cursed, the regular Pack-a-Punch prices are by default increased. Tier 1 Pack-a-Punch is 10,000 points, Tier 2 Pack-a-Punch is 25,000 points, Tier 3 Pack-a-Punch is 50,000 points, and if you have Tier 4 Pack-a-Punch unlocked, it is 100,000 points. That is 185,000 points just to get one gun fully pack-a-punched. That is an insane amount of points. And I will absolutely be doing a deep dive into the player psychology. I'm going to have all the stats and all of the graphs. I'm going to do multiple different playthroughs of, okay, what if I just point maximize? What if I just aim for the head? What if I do something in the middle, in Cursed and Standard and all of these different modes? How does the progression feel? So I'm going to have more well-developed thoughts on the point system later, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit here because it is a little bit of a slippery slope. It definitely feels, especially if you are somebody who wholeheartedly believes that, oh my goodness, I love the new or the old point system because, oh, it means I could switch my weapon at any point in time, because if I switch it out, it's weak, which means I can get a ton of points. Well, guess what? If you switch out a weapon, you're going to need to get 185,000 points to get that all the way fully pack-a-punched. And I apologize if these are like straw man arguments here, but this is just kind of how I'm thinking about this whole dynamic. If people are using the fact that you switch out your weapons really quickly or really easily with this classic point system, but they're also not fully pack-a-punching their gun all the way to pack-a-punch tier 3 or pack-a-punch tier 4, then it's only fair that we have the same standards and expectations for the other point system, the new point system, because I heard a lot of conversations being like, oh my goodness, if you want to pack-a-punch a different weapon in Black Ops 6, or you know, this new point system, you have to spend 50,000 points. Whereas that's not necessarily true, because if you only pack-a-punch your gun once, it's only 5,000 points. And if you pack-a-punch it again, it's only 20,000 points total. So we have to use the same exact measurements. We have to use the same exact barometers across both point systems in order to be fair and have any sort of honor and integrity. If you say, with this classic point system, it's so great to change weapons, but you don't fully pack-a-punch your guns, you have to have that same mentality with the new point system, which is something I don't think a lot of people have been doing. Similarly, I've seen people say, oh, the problem with the point system is not actually with the point system, it's actually with how expensive everything is. This would be so much better if the points were a lot lower, if everything was a lot cheaper, if pack-a-punch prices were reduced, if the perks had their original prices like their classic prices and never got, you know, increase in their price, which again is a fair criticism. I agree with that criticism quite a bit. That's one that I really think has a lot of merit to it. But here's the thing. If we were to reduce those prices with how many points that players are able to earn, it would mean that we would be able to get pack-a-punch 3 weapons on like round 10 or 15 or something ridiculous like that. Again, I need to do the stats. I need to get like these actual hard numbers coded in. But essentially, if these prices were too low, then the progression would be so incredibly fast. Now, obviously, you don't need to progress that way. You don't need to point maximize all the time, which is always everybody's argument, of course. You could just aim for the head. You could just, you know, use a regular weapon that's really good at damaging. But everybody's favorite thing about this point system is the fact that you are gaining more points. So why wouldn't you point maximize? That's what the game is encouraging you to do. On top of that, why is it such a bad thing that pack-a-punch costs a lot of points? Well, then I think what a lot of people would say is the negative of that would be that it's forcing you to point maximize. It's forcing you to play in that sort of way, right? I think we can all agree with that. The problem with the, you know, 185,000 points is the fact that now, whereas it was an option before to point maximize, now it's encouraging you, maybe not forcing you, but it's very much pushing you to the way of using the Akita, using a weak SMG, never pack-a-punching it, and just farming points until you get however many pack-a-punch levels you want. And to that I say, if that's what you believe, I agree with you. I'm 100% on board with you. If you think the problem with the high prices is the fact that it forces you to point maximize, I want you to be really honest with yourself. If the negative of the classic point system is the fact that it forces you or encourages you to take full advantage of the best thing about the point system, is that really a good point system? Because I think we all understand that shooting a zombie and farming points slows the game down. I think we all understand you are sacrificing your time in order to get more points. You want to be at a low round, you don't want to progress through the rounds too quickly, so you want to use the point system and the Akitas and the SMGs and get as many points as quickly as possible. And so if that means spending a little bit more time shooting zombies instead of killing zombies, then maybe it's worth it. But if doing that is the biggest downside of that point system, is that even good in the first place? It feels hypocritical to me. It feels like it's a contradiction. I know Black Ops 6 and the modern point system, and even here Black Ops 7, I know there's a lot of perks and there's a lot of points. There's a lot of points you need to earn, but the way you earn points in this new point system is by killing zombies. And it just so happens that I am playing the zombie mode specifically for killing zombies. I very much like killing zombies. That's why I play zombies. And so if something is really expensive, I don't mind killing zombies because that's the point of me playing zombies. Whereas if something is really expensive and I have to stop killing zombies and I have to slow down my game and I have to not kill zombies and I just shoot zombies and I find that boring and you find that boring, I think that's a problem. Now that being said, before I lose you, I don't think it was a problem back in the day. I think all the way through Black Ops 3 Infinite Warfare, I don't think this was a problem at all. I think the classic point system worked so well back in the day because the point system dynamic was only relevant within the first 10 to 15 rounds. Once you got your 4 perks, because there's a 4 perk limit, you pack-a-punched your gun one time, and maybe you got one ammo mod on it, you know, 5,000 for a pack-a-punch, 2,500 for an ammo mod, that's like 7,500 points, another 2,500 for Jug, so that's 10,000 points, and you got Quick Revive, which is 500, so you're looking anywhere from like 10,000 to 15, 20,000 points to get fully set up with one gun. Add on another 7,000 points for any additional guns you want. You do not need that much time to get that many points in classic zombies. And because you progressed through that progression so quickly, the point system quickly became irrelevant. But that really isn't the biggest deal in the world, because it worked for the time that you needed it to work, and then after that, cool, you just had an excess of points. But here's the thing. Treyarch wanted points to play more of a part in the entirety of your gameplay session. They wanted points to always be relevant. They wanted you to constantly have to manage the resource of points in the zombie survival game. And so it was it was actually Jason Blundell back in Black Ops 4, and he did an interview where he said that if you are a half-competent zombies player, then you would be able to get points too quickly. It became too easy for you to get set up, and points became irrelevant. That was the core issue, or the core dynamic that Jason Blundell, and the Treyarch team wanted to change. And so in Black Ops 4, we got basically the same exact point system we have in Black Ops 7. Melees get you tons of points, headshots gets you bonus points, and then regular body shots gets you a standard amount of points. And I think that is the perfect compromise. Spoiler alert, I think the modern point system with Black Ops 7 is the best compromise that we have. I love that melee kills get you extra points, so you have that player agency of, hey, I'm going to use a melee weapon, I'm going to get close to the zombies, and I'm going to get a critical hit on the zombies in Black Ops 7 to get even more points, so that player agency is now back on us. We can get ahead of the game if we're willing to play in a specific way while also still progressing the rounds and keeping the pacing up. Or there's a middle ground where you can get headshots, or there's a sloppiness if you're using like a shotgun or an explosive or a wonder weapon where you're just getting body shot kills. So you have like 3 different levels of player agency. I think it works so well. But the biggest thing about it is that points are forever a resource. All the way up until the very high rounds, past round 30, I'll say, those first 30 rounds, that first hour of your game, you are absolutely managing how many points you have. And I don't think players are used to that. I don't think players are used to managing their points like they should. If you find yourself not going down, then yeah, maybe you can invest in Pack-a-Punch and perks. But if you're somebody who goes down a lot and you only buy perks all the time, and you just buy perks, you don't upgrade your weapon, you don't upgrade your armor, then yeah, you're gonna struggle a little bit. It adds such a player freedom and player expression and skill expression, and it works so well in, like I said, a zombie survival game where you have to manage this resource because this resource is finite. The thing about the classic point system, especially in Cursed, is that this resource is no longer finite. Now, it has its positives. Remember, like however many minutes ago where I said the positives about player agency, and you can be flexible and you can skill express that way. Absolutely, that is all there, but boy, is it incredibly overpowered. So their solution to this was to escalate all of the prices. Hey, Kevin Drew told us in our creator call, the classic point system is in this challenge mode, and boy, are you gonna need it. Tier 4 Pack-a-Punch, 185,000 points, golden armor, 45,000 points, plus all of the other stuff. It is very apparent that they are expecting us to use this point system with the weak SMGs and the Akita shotguns. This is working as intended. And like I said, both systems work in their own respective areas. They have different pros and cons. One is not inherently better than the other. I think the new point system is far better for a more challenging, for a more well-paced game. I think the classic point system is great for player agency because you can get as many points as you want as early as you want. It is great for an easy mode. It's fun to kind of break the game with Pack-a-Punch tier 4 and have all the zombies be a one-shot at health cap or something ridiculous, and to get, hundreds and hundreds and millions of points before round 30. Like, it's a fun experience and it's worth having that. But I challenge you this: if you're somebody who likes the classic point system but doesn't like the high prices, I challenge you to resolve that conflict that Jason Blundell and his team had years ago. How do you make points relevant all the way into the 30s and the 40s without jacking up all of the prices, or without capping how many points you get per kill? Because at that point, I don't think that's possible. And with that in mind, I want to remind everybody, you guys are getting a history. Every time I talk, I give you a history lesson because I've been around zombies for a long time. I was there back in Black Ops 4. And even back in Black Ops 4, when we were talking about this new point system, because that Jason Blundell interview was so widespread knowledge, he said that he wants points to be relevant into the late game of zombies. Everybody threw in their 2 cents. Everybody said, I don't want to say everybody, tons of people, tons of comments said, hey, if they want points to be relevant, instead of capping how many points we get per round, that's the lazy way of doing it. Instead, what they should do is just increase the prices of things. Increase the price of gobblegums, increase the price of doors, increase the price of shields, increase the price of Pack-a-Punch. And what do you know? Here we are, Black Ops 7 Zombies yet again. We got exactly what we asked for. Classic point system. If you want points to be relevant, jack up the prices. It is exactly what we suggested years and years ago. It is so freaking interesting. I love it. I love it so much. I don't hate the classic point system. I think it's fine. I think it's just easy. I know some people think that, oh, but it takes a skill to like point farm, like you're training zombies and you're not killing them. So that's like a skill, but like it's not. And it's especially not here in Black Ops 7 with armor and the zombie damage scaling and all that stuff. No. It is not hard to not kill zombies, especially nowadays. It is not a skill to get that many points. This is easy mode. And that kind of culminates to my thoughts here. Cursed mode, outside of certain relics. There are certain relics that you can absolutely make this game harder, but I tell you, cursed mode, and I think a lot of people agree with this. Cursed mode is actually far easier than the standard mode. Pack-a-Punch tier 4 with the point system, you can point farm. You can get Pack-a-Punch tier 4 in round 20. You can get ultra rarity, golden armor, especially during these boss fights. The main thing with Caltheris is the fact that you don't have armor, so having golden armor just regenerate. In Ashes of the Damned, golden armor was fantastic because if you're driving, you can't armor plate, but hey, if you dodge enough, boom, you've got full armor again. It is so crazy that this challenge mode is actually far easier than the standard mode. And that's a generalization here, okay? Don't like hold me to that or anything, but for the most part, there are the benefits of Cursed far outweigh the challenge of it. Let's put it that way. Yes, the relic challenges can be very difficult, especially on Astra Malorum. That's really challenging. Don't like it too much, but it's absolutely challenging. Beating the boss fight post round 60, that's fair. That's challenging. Absolutely. That's tough. Having the relic without a self-revive, that could be pretty tough if you're playing solo and you get unlucky with TED tasks. The 4 perk limit can feel pretty limiting, especially if you don't get the good TED tasks. But generally speaking, Cursed mode for being a challenge mode is actually far easier. It's gonna be like my preferred method of getting to high rounds because your guns deal more damage and you have regenerating armor, two of the most important balancing factors in high rounds in general. And so please don't mark me down as like, oh, he doesn't like the classic point system, because I just feel like there is such a weird dynamic with it versus the community versus game balance and traditional gameplay design. What other currency system in any other game allows you to basically have infinite of that currency whenever you want to, just by doing something, albeit a little bit boring? There's not many things like that. And I think that's important because that's kind of the charm of classic zombies. That's kind of the charm of what zombies was. There wasn't anything like it. No other points. There's nothing else like the point system in gameplay because it wasn't exactly balanced properly, as we've seen. But that's kind of what made it charming. And similar to the Easter eggs and the boss fights, there were things that didn't make any sort of sense. There were things that developers purposely made poorly designed or difficult to find. And that's kind of the charm of zombies. And that's kind of the conflict that modern zombies, or I mean, even Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4 zombies had, where how do you make zombies appealing for as many people as possible while also purposely having some of these more frustrating design decisions in it? And that's more so talking about Easter eggs and the point system. The point system is broken towards the player's benefit. So how do you balance that and have everybody be happy, yada, yada, yada. I love talking about this. This is so interesting. Hopefully we can keep it civil. Hopefully you guys kind of are seeing what I'm seeing here. But overall, like I said, Cursed is one of those things that I think needs to be a staple in zombies going forward. Even if they never rebalance the points, even if they never rebalance, you know, the salvage cost. I think salvage cost is way crazy for that ultra rarity. I think that's really tough to do. That's probably the hardest thing about Cursed, is getting enough salvage to get that ultra rarity, and it still feels like it doesn't do that much. But overall, I am a huge fan of Cursed. I'm loving it. I'm loving it for content too. I need to get a good ultimate guide on it. That's kind of my next big project. I'm dissecting Juggernog right now. Boy, the amount of augments that we have for Juggernog, it's crazy. But I'm going to be dissecting the classic point system and doing an ultimate guide for Cursed very soon, because it's a very underrated mode. I want to promote it as much as I can because it's so darn cool. And dang it, you know what? I forgot to even mention, I don't know how I feel about the main quest unlocking the ability to unlock relics. I feel like that's maybe holding it back a little bit. I feel like the relics are so darn cool. Making somebody beat an Easter egg, especially some of these Easter eggs in standard, it might be too tall right now. It might be too tall of an ask, which is crazy, which is so sad, because I know this game is meant for kind of the more hardcore players with how difficult these Easter eggs are and everything. It's kind of this double-edged sword. I've noticed some strange elitism, so much elitism lately with Black Ops 7 with difficulty, and oh well, certain players shouldn't be able to access this, and oh well, they need to do this because, well, they haven't been, you know, listening to the hardcore player for years, and and all this stuff, which I don't think is necessarily true. But I wonder how many people would interact with the relic hunt and the relics in general if they didn't have that Easter egg requirement. Maybe that's a poll that you guys have seen before this episode goes up. I don't know. If anything, I might want to push for that to change because I want as many people to experience Cursed as possible. I think Treyarch wants as many people to experience Cursed as possible. So locking the relics behind the main quest is pretty, it's steep. It's steep. It's fine-ish, especially because you can do it in directed mode. That's not that big of a deal. But even still, I think we have a problem in the community, a big problem actually. And this has been a problem for years. You know, there's a Zombros podcast talking about this way back in the day, back in Zetsubo no Shima, they had JC Backfire on, and they were talking about like, how do you define a casual zombie player? How do you define a hardcore zombie player? These are generalizations that we say and we try to communicate with each other with, but what we say or what we define as a hardcore player is not necessarily accurate. Like, I would describe myself as a hardcore player ever since Black Ops 3, especially Black Ops 4. Like Black Ops 4, I was well into YouTube, I was well into tutorials and guides, and I did all the side quests, I did a whole bunch of stuff, but for the entirety of Black Ops 4, I never did an Easter egg. It wasn't until years later that I did an Easter egg, and I wasn't all that big into high rounds either. Like, I would do a couple, but that wasn't like why I played zombies. I was really into the zombies for the spectacle, for the setup, for the general gameplay. Training zombies was big. I loved that. I loved the sandbox of zombies, and I would describe myself as a hardcore player back then, even though I didn't do any Easter eggs. But here we have a quote-unquote hardcore mode for the most hardcore players, you know, and it's locked behind an Easter egg. But not everybody who's a hardcore player likes Easter eggs. Not everybody who likes Easter eggs is a hardcore player either. You have some casual people who just love Easter eggs, right? Like, that's the only thing they do, but they play casually. And so I think it is short-sighted. I think it's a little shallow to say, oh, they should keep this main quest Easter egg requirement for relics just because it's meant for the hardcore player. Because one, what does it matter to you how someone else unlocks something? Two, not everybody who's a hardcore player likes Easter eggs. Easter eggs, it's such a different gameplay to the core gameplay of zombies that it would make sense if the cursed mode was just focused on Easter eggs. If the only point for cursed was to beat Easter eggs, then maybe I'd agree with you. Maybe I'd say, yeah, that makes sense because really Cursed is just for the people who like Easter eggs, so that's just who it's for. But no, Cursed has tier 4 Pack-a-Punch. Cursed has golden armor, which is great for high rounds. It's great for general gameplay. It has the classic point system, which is great for general gameplay. And so relegating all of those amazing things, and plus the 4 perk limit, the different relics, the different strategies, and the different like gameplay experiences, relegating that to just people who are willing to complete an Easter egg, I think that is more limiting than it needs to. Don't get me wrong, when we first heard of Cursed, and it was like, ooh, we're gonna have to see how you unlock it for that. They were gonna have it locked behind the main quest for everybody to do individually. And boy, I feel like that again was a big mistake. I think that it was good that they changed it. Maybe if they kept it for like a day or two or something, I don't know. But I think it's actually so popular. I think it's such a big success. I think any barrier you put in front of it is not gonna be worth it. I don't think when people look back on Black Ops 7, they're gonna think, oh my goodness, it was so fun to beat the Easter egg to unlock relics. I think they're gonna say, oh my goodness, Cursed was so fun. That is gonna be the mainstay. And I think they could also look back and go, man, I wish I could unlock relics because it looked really fun, but I don't like Easter eggs and I don't want to do it. You and I know, we all know that especially in directed mode, Easter eggs are pretty easy, pretty chill, but they still require an hour, 2-hour investment in a gameplay style that people might not be excited to do. I haven't seen anybody really talk about that, so I'm interested to see your perspective. But outside of Cursed here, let's talk about Black Ops 7 zombies in general. Let's do some miscellaneous stuff, because there's a lot of little details that I love about it. Personally, I really like Black Ops 7 zombies. The fact it is an improvement to last year that I already liked. The maps have much more personality. The Christmas game mode is not only the map with some snow, but new quests and boss fights. The Cursed mode, you would personally give it an 8.5 out of 10. Great comment. I'm right there with you. This is one of my favorite zombie experiences. Honestly, I'm really glad they stuck with the augment system and expanded upon it. Compared to Black Ops 6, it feels like there are far more viable options instead of usually just having the best choices be so much better than the rest and not having a reason to switch. With general balancing, it feels like you have far more room for customization and being able to play how you want to, especially with the inclusion of double minor augments. Hopefully I'm going to throw up some more comments here, but I absolutely agree. I wanted to talk about the augments because this is one of the biggest things that I was kind of worried about. I heard double augments and I immediately thought, oh my goodness, the game is going to be a little bit easier. Oh no, we're kind of slipping back into the Cold War feel. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. The game is really well balanced. I love these different abilities, and because it's 2 minor slots, not major slots, it feels way more subtle, but also stronger. It feels like just powerful enough to be noticeable, but not too overpowered where it's like, oh my goodness, this completely destroys everything. Ammo mods feel way more important. I love how strong ammo mods are. Same thing with field upgrades, but because you can still only do 1 major augment, I think that is the ultimate balancing factor. I absolutely am in love with the augment system. The augment system is going to be one of those things that if they ever change the formula, if they ever change up how this thing goes, I am going to miss the augment system. Same goes for the crafting table. I've not heard many people talk about the crafting table, positive or negative. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss it so much if they ever decide to change it, because that is such a core aspect to the sandbox. And now with the hunter drones, with the overheal ability with stim shots, they're bringing back the shock charge and the different kill streaks. They have balanced salvage so well. They could bring back the mutant injection and it would be fair and balanced. It wouldn't be overpowered. Yes, it's still a get out jail free card, and yes, you can kind of turn through the round that you activated on, but you earn salvage at such a slow rate now that the entire like crafting table system is so well designed. Plus max ammos, refilling your equipment. I love it. I love it so much. Plus you pair it up with Parting Gift with Vulture Aid. The Disciple Injection is one of the most underrated kill streaks out there. It is fairly close to the Mutant Injection if you use it correctly. It does seem a little bit bugged, which we'll talk about, but I am so excited for hopefully we get the rest of the Black Ops 6 stuff in here. I do kind of want to see the Mutant Injection. I really want to see the smoke grenades back because man, they work so well. They hide you from Oscar. They hide you from the bosses. I think it works super well, but one of the single best things that I just have to praise this game for is at least through round 80, the lack of boss zombie spam is incredible. And I know some people say, oh, well, I get a Zersa like every other round. And like, yeah, that's still fairly frequent. But I just want to remind you, like last year, we got like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 manglers every round, plus the parasites that were constantly shooting at you, plus the vermin that were constantly jumping at you. So having like 2 to 3 Ravagers and like maybe a Zersa here and there, and then that's it. And then the reduction of the super sprinters, my goodness, it feels like classic zombies dialed up so well. The omni movement and the movement in general feels so smooth. I was worried without tack sprint, without PhD slider. No, it feels fantastic with the stamina up augments, the sprinting in all the different directions feels great. I am semi worried about the damage scaling, and so I'm going to try to research as much as I can with that. But so far, I have been able to train regular zombies, super sprinters, with regular weapons and ammo mods and just training all the way through round 80, and it feels so darn good. And it's taken me hours. It's taken a long time. Obviously camping is going to be faster, but I love the fact that we could just use our weapons and just train zombies again. Yes, I know some people don't like super sprinters, but they don't have that bad damage scaling. The crazy damage scaling only happens to regular armored zombies. Armored zombies get crazy damage scaling, but they will never super sprint. So it very much feels like classic zombies where it's now kind of a tight wire act where you have to be good with your movement. You have to be good at training in order to be successful here. And if you are good at training, then it actually matters. And so many people have said, oh, well, if you could get to round 30, get to round 40, then you could get to whatever round. But now with this damage scaling and training, that changes. Now, if you're able to train into round 80, that means something different than you being able to train into round 50 or into round 100. One of these days, I really want to train all the way to round like 100 or 115. I just want to see how balanced it is, because from everything that I've experienced, like I said, I've only gotten to round 60. Well, I've gotten around 60 quite a few times. I've gotten to round 70 once or twice, maybe 3 times. And I've got to round 80 once. And every single one of those times, it felt really fair and balanced and fun. I know it's not for everybody. I know it's still challenging. And again, challenge is subjective, but I love the changes to high rounds here. I absolutely love them so much. What I don't love. We've talked about bosses, we've talked about balance, we've talked about this, we've talked about that. The number one issue, and I think this might be the most crippling issue with Black Ops 7 right now. It seems as though most things in some way, shape, or form are bugged. And it is absolutely frustrating. And I know if it's frustrating for us, it has got to be extra frustrating for the developers. I know that sounds real butt kissy and all that stuff, but as somebody who's worked on something, whether it's a DPS spreadsheet or a video, or even at my job, whenever somebody points out something that is wrong or not working or something that I got wrong and could have done better, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I feel bad. And so with so many bugs in the game between all of the augments, it is absolutely, let me say this clear. It is unacceptable how many augments are not working right now. It's crazy. Augments aren't working. There are, bugs with the mule kick augment now that interacts with certain kill streaks. The hand cannon gets extra ammo with mule kick, but then you can't use that extra ammo. There's bugs with field upgrades. They kind of work in the player's favor. When you switch a field upgrade, you get like the enhanced or the fastest field upgrade charge for the very first time you do it, but that's not that big of a deal. What is a big deal is Ether Shroud. You'll Ether Shroud and still take damage occasionally. That's not great. There's a point in time with the escalating field upgrade charges that I think eventually your field upgrade just never charges. I don't know if that's a bug or if that's just that people have used it for so long that it's just crazy how much you have to charge up the field upgrades for. I don't know. Every single game that I play, I have to turn off the mission tracker. But guess what? It's already off, so I have to flick it on and then flick it off in order to actually turn off the mission tracker, even though it's already off in the menus. The game started with the menus completely not, or the HUD options completely not working. I know this is fixed, but if you like scrolled too much in the menu for the HUD at launch, then it would reset all of your settings. And I don't think this is a bug, but the List Keeper's Challenge boss fight is just so ludicrously unbalanced that all of these things really paint a picture for somebody playing the game that, hey, I don't think Treyarch has playtested this. And look, I hate that phrase so much. I hate these little buzz phrases to like throw shade at the developers, because 9 times out of 10, the situation is far more complex and nuanced than people would be really willing to give credit to. But it has gotten to the point with the amount of bugs, glitches, and unbalanced, like that List Keeper's Challenge specifically, is to the point where I don't think this is an insult. I don't think it's an insult. I just think it's a matter of fact. It does not look like whoever is testing these things is doing it right. or whatever system they have, if they even have a system. The option is either they don't have a system and they're relying on each individual developer working on the same, spaghetti code, whatever, and hoping everything works out and doesn't break. Or if they are testing out these things, then it's not thorough enough. But with that being said, it's absolutely unacceptable that this is the final product here. I want to make that clear. This is not good. And I think if this continues, even if we maintain, if we fix some bugs, but the new bugs pop up, if we stay like treading in this depth of water, I think it's going to be a stain on Black Ops 7 without a shadow of a doubt. It is already becoming that. On that same note, if they were to do something and say, hey, we're going to postpone Season 2 and fix all of these bugs, I think that would also do irreparable damage to the reputation of Black Ops 7, which is already not looking great. So I think this is a really delicate situation where I think they need to spend a lot of time fixing bugs, but also not sacrifice any time to get new content out. I think we're at the time now at the launch of this game. We need new content to come out in February on time in order to keep the momentum and build the momentum of Black Ops 7, but also you need to get these bugs fixed. And I will be the first one to lie on the dagger and say, guys, I think we don't understand how complex this game is. Between all of the challenges, the weekly challenge tracking, the daily challenge tracking, the camo challenges, the prestige, the different attachments, the different augments, and all the different bosses, this game is so much more complicated than anybody gives it credit for. Back in the day, in classic zombies, we had 4 perks. Do you want more health? Here you go. Do you want to reload faster? Here you go. Do you want to have a third gun? Here you go. That's it. That was the complexity of classic zombies. It's not that hard. But here, every single thing, every single field upgrade, every single augment, or every single perk, every single ammo mod has 8 different augments, and those augments interact with themselves differently and interact with each other differently, and they all interact with the bosses differently and the kill streaks differently and the crafting table and all the different pieces of equipment. Like, there is so much to test. How do you know that one change you do here isn't gonna change something else over here? I don't know. I'm not a programmer. I just know that when I'm doing my spreadsheets and testing, and then you've got the relics and all the LTMs and all there's just so many things. I just know as I'm breaking all of this down, I cannot comprehend how complicated this game has to be under the hood, especially sharing it with COD HQ, which I've got to say, I think has a lot more positives, at least for the developers, than we give it credit for. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe it's forced on by like Microsoft or something. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I respect how challenging it must be to dig through all of this code and to try to figure out, plus with how big of a team, like you don't know, is it the one guy working on all of the different augments, or is it a team? Are they all in the same place? Are they across the country? Are they across the world? Especially with the holidays, did this this guy take the holiday off and he's the only one that knows how to fix this, so now he's over here with his family and everything. Like, I understand and I respect how complicated of an issue this is. I'm not sitting here trying to be high and mighty, oh my goodness, this is unacceptable, this is crazy, they should be ashamed of themselves. Like, no, bugs and glitches are bad, and you don't need to get on a high horse in order to say that. That's a very easy thing to recognize. But I will say, from the consumer, it is getting to a point where it's too much. It is getting to a point where it absolutely is unacceptable. But we do live in the real world, and in the real world, there are problems, there are people who make mistakes, systems are not perfect, things slip through the cracks on accident due to no one's fault, or maybe they are due to someone's fault, but then that person left or changed or did something, or it was an honest mistake. We don't know. And as a consumer, it's not on us to know. It's not on us to care. All we can do is talk about what we have. And what we have now is a game that is really gonna get stained with all of these bugs unless they get squashed pretty quickly. I think we've done a pretty good job of letting everybody go on holiday this year. I haven't seen too many angry tweets or comments or Reddit posts about these bugs and all this stuff. Like, obviously the bugs are bad, but I think people are kind of being pretty reasonable about the holiday break. So that's really good, but hopefully they start strong with a good bug fix start, and then 115 day, they tease the new stuff, and then the new stuff comes out in February. I think that'll be great. That's how it's really got to go if they want to keep this momentum of all of this positivity from the launch. Because if they don't do anything about the bugs, then I think everything's going to start getting a lot more negative. And of course, I do have to mention, when the game first launched, I was crashing a bunch, but luckily I haven't been crashing all that much until I started to do the Astra Malorum Easter egg in that live commentary. So I'm going to have to double check my drivers and make sure everything's up to date, or maybe it shouldn't be up to date and I just need to wait for a patch to come out. I don't know. Luckily, I have not crashed that much since the first couple weeks of the launch. Ever since Astra Malorum came out, it seemed to be doing a little bit better. And I'm going to leave you with this one comment. I'd love to see the Black Ops 6 maps. I think, and I want to plant the seed early on, I would love a Zombies Chronicles 2 with every single map from Black Ops 6, from Cold War, and you know what? Let's go ahead and throw in the Vanguard maps in here too. I would love to see at least the Cold War and Black Ops 6 maps in this system. I would love to see these augments, the Easter eggs, the boss fights with these field upgrades, the equipment, the smoke grenades, the shock charges, and most of all in Cursed. Oh my goodness, Cursed mode would be so good with all of these different maps, maybe having different relics in them. I don't know about that, but that could be pretty fun. Maybe even survival maps, some cutouts of some other ones like the original Nocturne and Toten from Cold War. That could be a really fun one. I have absolutely no idea when they would have the time to do this, but if it is going to be a couple years after Black Ops 7 until we get the next Zombies game, then maybe, in the middle of next year during Modern Warfare 4, during the low point of the season 3 or so, maybe that's when they could do, hey, here's all the Black Ops 6 maps here, here's all the Cold War maps here, and then boom, Doughnuts does some brand new guides, some updated guides in this new system, and oh, it would be so fun, it would be so good. And I just want to say, I forgot to talk about it a little bit. I think, I agree with this comment here, I think it is crazy for people to call this Black Ops 6 2.0. I need to make a spreadsheet, I know, but I really think from Cold War to Black Ops 6 and from Black Ops 6 to Black Ops 7, there has been more changes to all of the different dynamics of zombies than there was from World War to Black Ops 3. At least in terms of like core elements. I know the maps were a lot different back then, so there's a lot of map specific stuff, but the point system was the same. The perk system was basically the same. You had perma perks in Black Ops 2, but that's it. They went back to the same in Black Ops 3. You always started with the pistol, so that always was the same. Pack-a-Punch was the same. I guess ammo mods were new to Black Ops 3, but that's not really having anything to do with the Pack-a-Punch anymore. The way this game plays, the way Black Ops 7 plays is so different from Black Ops 6. From the high rounds to the point maximizing to Cursed and the survival maps and the augments and the more augments and the 2 augments, it's a completely different game. And then the salvage changes, not having any overpowered chopper gunners or mutant ejections, it is such a different game. And Black Ops 6 is so different than Cold War, so different than Black Ops 7. I know people don't like the reuse of field upgrades or the reuse of perks and everything, but the way they play is so different here in Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7 thanks to the augment system. I genuinely can't take that many points away from it. Unfortunately, I do see like Ring of Fire coming back, even though I think that's just going to break the meta. Maybe that'll be really good for the boss fights or something, I don't know. I could see Widow's Wine coming back, apparently that was leaked. I could see Tombstone coming back, and there are your 3 perks for the brand new game. Mule Kick, Doomstone, Widow's Wine. I feel like those are the 3 ones that you can bring back, which is essentially all of the perks that we've ever had. Stone Cold Stronghold, I really think could work well as a perk, but it is an augment that kind of just solidifies the fact that it's not going to be a perk, which is heartbreaking, but it is what what it is, it's okay. But like I said, with the augment system, these things are going to play so differently that I kind of forgive them a little bit. I mean, after all, in Black Ops 3, when Juggernaut came back and when Electric Cherry came back, you know, people weren't saying, oh my goodness, reuse content. They were like, no, what's new? Like we did want new perks back then, but no one was complaining about Jug or about Quick Revive or about PhD. No, we wanted PhD back because it was core to the sandbox of zombies. So that involves a whole other conversation about how big can your sandbox get before it's too big, like how many more field upgrades can fit whatever different roles, offensive, defensive, everything like that. It's just, it's a lot more complicated than I think we give it credit for. But anyway, I am a huge fan of Black Ops 7. It is looking to be really good. Again, the legacy of Black Ops 7, we'll have to wait and see. Just like all of the other zombie games, we won't know until we know. We won't know until years down the line and we digest this for a little bit. But as of right now, Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7 are looking to be really solid iterations of zombies. This might be the longest podcast episode I've done. Hopefully it is. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I have so much to say about Black Ops 7. I have so much more to say. I could say so many things. But if you love these longer videos and me just talking zombies, be sure to check out this video and stay beautiful.